Okay, we're here.
We're here. We've arrived. We have arrived.
So, we're back. It's been a bit of a... I think we should be really ready.
I think we have a 10-second delay.
Okay. So we're back. Welcome back, everyone. We might have a little bit of growing pains on this one because we haven't done this in a long time. And hopefully I'm going to do my little test about seeing if it's choppy or not. So maybe it is choppy. It seems like our video thing is red and yellow, so it doesn't love it. Green's the best color. There, I can't read what that comment says.
There uses.
Oh, a very helpful comment. Okay, so
it is helpful. That means that we have arrived on their screen.
We do exist. I hope the sound is good. That's number one. That the sound doesn't sound choppy, and then second is video. So the video, if it's a little stuttery or 1999, then that's fine. But hopefully, what do you think? It is a little skippy.
It's a little skippy, but you know what?
You want me to try to fix it while we're doing it?
I like peanut butter.
Do you want me to try to fix it, or we need to make that call now?
I think we're fine.
You think so? Let me click one button. Just
okay.
let me do one little click.
Watch your headphones.
Skimmy over.
Okay.
Here. All right.
If you are just joining us or have never seen a Quittin Time episode, we are people who fly by the seat of our pants. So this is normal. Everything's fine. Welcome to the show. You're okay with it. We're okay with it. Everybody's okay with it. We have some really fun stuff to talk about, so it'll be worth it. I even have like visual aids and stuff. So
they say that the video is a little goofy. Maybe I just made it better. It seems all green now.
Light stutter.
I tried. What I did was
fine.
I cut the bit rate in half.
Those are words in an order that make a sentence.
How about now? Choppy? Sound good? Better? It might be a little...
Jeff said that the video is improving.
Improving? I like that.
So, all right. Well, that's good. So, welcome.
It's been a while since we've done this. I'm Dylan. This is Nicole. We are some of the people that work at Throttle Company, which is our... motorcycle shop here in Columbus, Ohio. And what we specifically, I've realized the chat is so far away, so I can like see that people are saying.
It is good now. We're getting good, better. It's now good. Awesome.
So green is good. I also see green on our thing. So thank you for the help with the technical stuff, everyone.
Takes a village
as we get back
to raise
this.
us.
Okay, so what our exciting news that happened, and sort of Quittin Time is very loosey-goosey.
And seasonal.
And that's what I mean by that is that we kind of originally just did it as like, I wanted to like catch up with people and we'll do it like at the end of the day. So that's Quittin Time. And then if it's the winter-ish, at least it was when we started. And so we don't see people as much or less people are coming in or whatever. You're not riding definitely. And there's not bike nights and stuff like that. So a way of like socializing without having to actually be in person, etc. And I'm facing like this way. So I'm like not
sure
out and
interact with,
if you agree.
With humans.
Yeah.
No human interaction really required.
So now we're pretending to interact with humans by just doing a video while you watch. So, and then the exciting news this time is, so we thought this would be a good way to like get back into the swing of Quittin Time to talk about our recent trip to India. And the cool part about it was we won the trip. So Throttle Company, officially we sold the most scrams. We have, the year's not over, but like the time period that they were
It was actually a really small window.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like 2 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They put out Royal Enfield put out an email. I want to be careful about how I say this, but in a completely humble way, we didn't think we would win. So when they sent out a email saying like you might win a trip to India, we thought that would be great, and then we completely forgot about it because we didn't think we would win.
There was a step in between there, and that comes into play later. But I printed off passport applications for us.
At the time,
At the time.
Oh.
And then never looked at them again.
Yeah, and then there was a dealer meeting in Dallas where we went and rode the Super Meteor for the first time, which is now actually out, and we have them in the showroom and everything. But the two of us went to Dallas for the national, maybe even it was North America, Canada as well. Yeah, there were some Canadians, so that's international. And then
Canadians.
There were some Canadians, and then they were in Dallas and they announced it. So it was really funny because the way that they announced it, we're just sitting in the crowd.
Yeah.
And there was this big meeting with like people from India spoke and stuff like that. So like it was a big presentation and it was all day basically meeting. And they were like
all day.
Yeah, it was a long time.
All
and they were like,
day.
"Here, I remember that contest." And we're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that contest." And
they
were
literally
like,
still never remotely crossing our minds. We're just like, "Oh yeah, they're gonna say the 3 people who won, and then
and
we're
they
gonna
said,
move on."
"Here are the winners. First, Throttle Company. Stand up, Dylan." And I was like,
And immediately, by the time you sat back down, I had pulled up the communication we got.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh crap."
Yeah.
We didn't get passports.
Yeah, and it was like a month away,
Yeah.
and we wound up getting passports in a rush, and we had to get visas.
I'd like to never remember the day that I went around doing all of the passport stuff for myself.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of a couple of times when we were in India when I was just like, remember that time when I was running around to all these different places trying to get my passport stuff done? This is so much better and worth it. It just like made it all worth it.
So a lot of people said that's not possible. Like you've waited too long or whatever. I mean, waited too long is debatable. I guess we should have gotten our passports ahead of time, but we honestly did not think we would win. So we
had 8 weeks.
Yeah, and so we did our passports, and some people said, "No, you'll
5.
never get them," and we did get them, and we had to send copies of them to get the visas and do all this other stuff. Anyway, it all worked out. We wind up having 2 very long flights, so 2 like 9-hour flights, and we flew to Germany, had a short layover there, but it was all with all our Royal Enfield friends. A lot of people from Baxter Cycles, if you know those guys, in Marnie, Iowa, and they brought 5 people, and then some regional managers, and then from Royal Enfield, and then people from Raleigh, and people from Cheyenne, Wyoming, and then us. So there was 4 dealers that like won a trip. And then the big event, so there was 2 main parts to the trip, which the first one was the headquarters of Royal Enfield, and the factory is in a place called Chennai, and I'll try to make...
It's not Chennai, and we have been ingrained to know the right way to say it.
Well, the thing that I think they correct me on pronouncing is I say Chennai, kind of all one quick word. And I think they're hearing that as a single N. There's 2 N's. And they want to say Chennai. Chennai.
Yes.
And they
it's
will
almost
correct
like the CH is also like a little hesitation after the CH, which is a separate word.
You think so? Like
letter?
Chennai?
Yes.
Chennai?
Yes.
Really? Like that sounds like Mexican, when they have like native, like Incans, and they have like Tenochtitlan, and they have like a real hard stop in there.
But what we learned is we heard that the name of that city enough times to realize we've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Chennai. I'm obviously exaggerating, but there's like a real pause there, and they would correct you. Anyway, Chennai. And then
I mean that segues really well into the controversy of whether you say Himalayan or Himalayan.
Obviously they only say Himalayan.
They say Himalayan.
So we'll cover our trip. This whole episode is basically what happened in India, and then, which by the way, I think we realized that this flag. Didn't we notice this? We think technically.
I think I might have hung it backwards.
It's backwards, and we think technically, but it's kind of tied up. It's not as easy as it just like unhooking. Anyway, we'll fix that for the keen eye observers. We already
that it should go orange, white, green, and that might be important.
Yeah, and you can barely tell, but anyway, and then so let me get this out as far as the intro. 2 parts: Chennai, and that is factory tour. Amazing. And then
we're going to talk about it more. Don't worry.
The official headquarters, so like a college campus kind of headquarters. Then Goa, which is GOA, that we fly to the other side of the country in India, a domestic in India flight. Then it's like on the beach. Basically, there's an event called Motoverse. Used to be called Rider Mania. Sometimes people still kind of call it Rider Mania.
I feel like they've adopted the Rider Mania as like the sub headline.
Or maybe the other way around. It used to be like 2 years ago they called it Rider Mania into the Motoverse. Now the whole thing is called Motoverse. It's kind of confusing, but basically Motoverse is probably the easiest way of thinking about it. But my best way of explaining Motoverse in the shortest possible thing is, if you've ever been to Mid-Ohio Vintage Days or Barber Vintage Festival, it's like that, except only Royal Enfield. So there's 10,000 motorcycles or whatever, but they're all Royal Enfields. Totally crazy. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning a little bit. We fly, we land. What a whirlwind tour. We got in at like 4 a.m. to the hotel. It was still very busy. It was crazy. The Indian culture, we'll get into all the little nuances and stuff. But like right off the plane, we get these guys, they're holding up a Royal Enfield sign and they're walking us around, and it's just chaos.
It's midnight. It
was like 2 in the morning maybe by the time we got there.
And the airport it's not crazy busy, but it's still busy enough that you're like,
People
there's
everywhere.
a line of taxis and buses ready to pick people up. And it's like, how many people do you expect to be here?
Honking, stopping everywhere, just in the middle of the thing.
Puppies to be stolen,
dogs
off the street.
So that's a thing that we can talk about. That's kind of striking to our Western eyeballs, is dogs and.
Thank you, Roland.
And
he pointed out that our Yamaha flag was hanging backwards.
Yeah, that's actually blasphemous. Some Yamaha people might get very upset about that. The nation of Yamaha will be up in arms. So we mean no disrespect to nation of Yamaha.
It's where I store my extra flags. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't get around to fixing those yet. So dogs, cows, they're just in the street. Honestly, the weirdest way of explaining it, it's like they're ghosts. It's like Indian people don't see them. And there will be, in the most extreme examples, there's like you'll see, you're driving down the street and there's just little shop, just like crammed in together along the main street. This is all in Chennai, and which was a little bit like this, but Chennai was like packed. And there will be like there's like 2 parking spaces, 2 cars worth of parking spaces, mostly motorcycles and scooters. But there will be like 5 cows in the way, and they just are like, well, I guess nobody parks at my business for today, and they'll just like walk around. So like they'll never touch the cow, they'll never like shoo the cow.
I saw a couple of people shoo a couple of cows gently, but what I think is interesting about the fact that you thought that they treated the cows and dogs like ghosts is that that's how the cows and dogs also acted, is like they could not be seen, or that nobody saw them, with the exception
they didn't want like your attention.
Yeah, the dogs did not want you to pay attention to them, except for one very cute, very good boy in Goa that actually came
on that like pallet.
Yeah, that came up to me when I
he was by a very like westerny hotel.
Yeah, so
like
people,
maybe he was used to that.
A lot of white girls probably going to pet him.
The rest of that, these dogs, it's so odd because in America, well, at least here, a dog comes up to you, someone brings their dog in, and you say hi to the dog and you pet the dog. But there it's like, what's a dog?
Yeah, they act more like cats. Like, I'm going to be out of the way over here.
Or like a raccoon. But like a raccoon is more of a pest. That's the thing, it was a complete ambivalence. Like, oh, a cow? I didn't notice. Like, it was literally like, I'm not angry that the cow's there eating the trash and making a mess in the street or like blocking traffic. I'm not angry, or I'm nothing about it. It's just what is. Obviously, it's very, very busy. And there was just the traffic is crazy. There's literally no like traffic calming signals. There's no like directions. There's no red lights. There's no stop signs. There's no lanes and turning lanes. It was just like the road is paved and there were lines. Man, were they like a suggestion? I
feel like all of the traffic indicators were a suggestion, but I also, even at least as a passenger, never felt unsafe, which was the odd part of that.
You can't drive very fast. The road conditions weren't great, but also they're kind of congested, and so you're just kind of like weaving in. But like, here, obviously it's a problem we always talk about where people are on their phones and they're driving and they're like swerving or whatever because they're on their phones. You can't even do that in India because driving requires like 9 out of 10 focus to just not like run over people or cows or dogs in the road. And so like these guys are driving and like everybody like has full awareness of like the corners of their car, and they'll just like push through in between things, and the motorcycles and scooters are just going whenever they have the chance. But it was, I mean, you've seen videos and footage of it, or at least I had before we went, and it's a lot of scooters, a lot of like there are motorcycles. In Chennai it was more scooters. I think it was at least 50% scooters. And then you did see a lot of motorcycles. So we're counting Royal Enfields. Oh, there's a Hunter.
Yeah.
Or there's a Himalayan.
But there were less Royal Enfields in Chennai than in Goa. And I don't know if that was specifically because
the event.
But there were also a lot more newer models when you did see a Royal Enfield than I expected.
And Goa had more roads like here, more open, more space between obstacles where you could actually get some speed. In Chennai, there were some
stretch of land.
There were some stretches where the road like sped up a little bit, like through like marshes where there wasn't any like buildings or anything. But like for the most part, you're driving like 10 miles an hour average. Like they're just not going fast. And so it's funny because they're wearing sandals or sometimes a lot of times barefoot, and they're supposed to be wearing helmets, but sometimes a lot of times not wearing helmets. But you also almost don't blame them because they're going like walking speed.
Yeah.
They're really not going that fast, but they have a long way to go, and that's how they're commuting or whatever. So I think that the easiest way of keeping on the route is let's just try to go chronological. I did want to step back. I know I'm literally
breaking your own rule you've just laid down. Got it.
When we first get in there, if you've ever traveled internationally, and by the way, can I have this on you if there is like a time-sensitive pressing question or whatever? I'm trying to rely on you.
Yeah, that's my job.
Good, perfect. Okay,
that's why I'm here. You think it's to provide lots of interesting commentary?
It definitely is. So anyway, the very beginning when we first get there, this is what I was going to say. When you get to a new country, you have to go through like immigration. Why are you here? What's the purpose of your trip? That kind of thing. And so we get there. We were constant, even though we're like traveling together, and like sometimes our tickets are like on the same paper.
And by us, do you mean the whole group or just
you and I? We were never quite sure. Should we go through together, or are they going to get mad and be like, hey, one at a time or something? So we were going one at a time just to try to like follow the rules as much as possible. And so but you're next to me at this desk. And I said, what's the purpose of your trip or whatever? And I said, like, business. And then we said, we work for Royal Enfield. Or we're here with Royal Enfield. And that's part of your visa. And so it says Royal Enfield, and that's like your contact in the country and everything. And the guy says, oh, I have a Himalayan, which they say Himalayan.
And this is the first time I got essentially, I think, accosted for saying Himalayan because I said, I've got a Himalayan. And the look of indignation on this man's face when I said Himalayan. Yes. How do you not know how to say it?
And so the guy at immigration was like, oh, yes, I love Royal Enfield. He says, are Royal Enfields popular? He didn't even ask me like your normal questions.
Yeah, he's not like, why are you here? He's like, what do you do?
What are they? Yeah.
How's Royal Enfield over there?
You sell Royal Enfields. He said, what? Are they popular? And I said, oh, yeah. And he said, more popular than Harley? And I said, it's getting there. They're gaining ground. And he said, what's the most popular bike? And there was like a security guard behind him that asked the same thing. What's the most popular bike in America, or for Royal Enfield in America? Because they're just upset. This is something I've noticed being in our business here. People from India who live in the U.S. will come in our shop, and they love that we like Royal Enfield. Oh, you have a Royal Enfield? Tell me about it. Oh my gosh, you like Royal Enfield? They just think it's just so Indian. So they were, and I said classic, by the way. The best selling bike, I think, by the numbers since it's come out, has been the classic. Now we just got Super Meteor. I think that's going to be really good, and then of course like future models and stuff like that. But like, I think that we always talk about this number, sort of like time on floor. If we push a classic out, it spends the least amount of time on floor until it's sold, and that's what I think, which they were surprised by. And we really didn't see as many classics, which is kind of interesting. I think they like bullets.
Of the classics that we saw, that was the one model I felt like I saw like older.
Yeah, you see the
versions
500. Well, what we would call
The
500,
bullet.
but they might have been 350s for them. But the UCE versions.
Yeah.
And we saw some like vintagey.
But still very few of those. I
Yeah.
felt like I can confidently say 75% of the Royal Enfields I saw were newer.
Yeah.
Himalayan model and newer.
Oh, yeah. So the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so skip ahead. Hotel was great. We get to Chennai. It's like 4 a.m. We have to wake up early. We go straight to the factory. So
Are you going to skip the fact that the food is amazing? We're just going to make this across the board. Food, amazing.
It was great.
Then we go to the factory tour.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a little controversial of me to say. I think the factory is my favorite part.
Factory was amazing. So give me your impression. I probably can consolidate my thoughts on the factory, but they always make you chai, which basically we say like chai tea or something here, but they just call it
You don't
chai.
have to say the tea part.
Yeah, and then they make chai. They have some other drinks. We were very conscious to not drink the water, even when they were like if it was a closed bottle, you'd be like sure. But sometimes they're trying to be a little fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, these are fancy people from another country. Let's give them like a glass of water. Like a glass of water. I just can't take the risk.
Well, I got us these water bottles that you could pour the water in and filter it through. And I feel like it's just a normal run of the mill kind of water bottle filter, nothing super special. So I think that was at least sufficient enough.
But so, I mean,
otherwise we got water out of the tap that I filtered out.
But when you first get to the factory, that was like this setup of food and drinks and stuff like that. And so we ate food and we mingle, and then they have a presentation about like their capacity and how many dealerships they have, and all very fascinating stuff. And we got to ask questions, and those guys were great. Then we go and we do the tour. So give me your impression. If you think the factory was the coolest thing, tell me why.
Before I answer that, I do want to say that Jason said, you're welcome in terms of helping us get to go to India.
Yeah, you bought a scram. It was all because of you, buddy.
I also don't understand Ray's comment of welcome back, Gabe and Julie.
Welcome
Ray,
back to
our names are Dylan and Nicole, just in case you're having like
sure he knows that. Maybe it's a cool. Those sound like really cool people that he's referencing in comparison.
And Jason also has a cousin that lives in Goa.
That's crazy. Okay.
Okay, we'll come back to that later. Maybe when we talk about Goa.
She should go to Motoverse. It's every year.
So my favorite thing about the factory tour is twofold. One, from the ability to have in my brain and the videos that I took, way to translate that to customers here to see just the process. Because I feel like while we have a good mix of customers that are very, I've never heard of Royal Enfield before, and then they do their own research and they just believe us from the get-go that they're just like, Royal Enfield's good, it's quality, it has a warranty, it has all these things. And you see the motorcycle in front of you and you're like, yes, this is a good motorcycle. I don't have to worry about where it's from. But I feel like there is some level of reputation that I feel like the name Royal Enfield tends to have here, and it's not always good, even though we know our close community here knows that Royal Enfield is good and appreciates the quality. It doesn't always translate as well to newcomers.
I think it's definitely a light version of racism, where it's
sure.
That's from India.
Very unfounded.
That's from India. They are making that on these dirt floors or whatever, and
couldn't be further from. And the funny thing is I would be more impressed if they made these with the accusations that we hear all the time.
This factory is totally state of the art. There are actually 3 factories now. We went to one of them where they do exclusively 350s, because the 350s, I think they do like 30,000 sales of 350s in India per month. So the 350s basically get their own factory, and they make half 350s and then half the bikes are made at the other factory. And it's the 350 engine, and then they do full assembly. The Hunters are actually, because they're newer, are actually finished in another factory, but they said they had the ability to bring them in and finish them there if they had to, for capacity wise. But to the quality thing. One of their big points about quality, they had these charts, and they basically were saying that every new model, they need to double the quality. So they had...
and they have data to back up that that's what's happening.
So, for example, and if you've paid attention to Royal Enfield, I think that it's definitely fair to say that like UCE days, so like 10 years ago and more, the quality wasn't great. And I think that's a totally fair thing to say. If you have paid attention, it's not really fair to say anymore. The new models, all the currently made models are fantastic as far as the reliability, especially if you consider that the Himalayan, the 411, is sort of just now. Well, the Himalayan had an update like with the Scrams in this year's Himalayan, but if you kind of cut out the 411, then the reliability is like off the charts. And they literally had, speaking of charts, they had charts to show this. So every new model, they were doubling their, basically halving their failure rates, but they were calling it, their version of reliability was to say, in the first month of production, we can have X amount of rejected bikes. So out of 100, they could have 3 or whatever.
But so my point one of my 2 points of why I liked the factory tour the most. The second part of the part one, so I have a 1A and 1B. The B part is that it didn't really make sense to us at first about why they didn't immediately release models worldwide. It now makes complete sense to me why there's a delay.
It takes a while. Yeah.
And I appreciate it now. And I have a way to explain. If someone's like, oh my God, they get the XYZ new model in January, why don't we get it till April or later? We want that.
One of the most frustrating things about Royal Enfield is, like, for example, the Super Meteor came out 9 months ago in India and in Europe and stuff like that, and then we get it last.
It sounds selfish, but at this point, now that I understand how that process works and how they're using that as a quality control feature, I want. And if there was a delay, then I know that they've either had issues with components that come from a third party, or they're fixing problems with their initial run in India.
You dance around it a little bit, but basically that's their policy, is to only sell bikes in India for the first 90 days. So that's the first 3 months. And the reason that they want to do that is if there was some kind of unforeseen, engine failure.
If their failure rate is higher than their acceptable limit, and even then it sounded like
it's pretty high.
We still want to figure out what that problem is. But if out of 100 you have more than 3 issues of the same component, or the same, I don't know, the steering bearings have gone bad on these right away, or whatever the thing is, that they want to be able to have a more tightly controlled recall of those to fix the problem before they go worldwide distribution, which absolutely makes sense to me.
Or they control the mechanics and the shops and everything, so they'll just send out their guys
and fix them
right then, and rather than being like, oh no, how are we going to have Europe fix this problem? How are we going to have the US send bikes back to India if it's that bad or whatever? So they just would like to have that amount of testing. It's pretty conservative, but they are way, way overboard conservative wise on quality stuff. So
it's one of
it's
one of the things that I've said even before we knew this information about. We still have not figured out how they make such a quality motorcycle for such an inexpensive price. And they're even less expensive, even with the conversion rate. They're even less expensive in India, which of course makes sense. But even with that increase in cost for it to go worldwide, it's still...
Oh, something happened here. You're watching an ad.
Sorry if you're watching an ad.
Are we watching? I guess I thought I picked to have this not monetized. Sorry if everyone's... You think people could... Everyone's watching an ad right now?
Maybe it's just me.
If that's happening, I don't know.
I'm
sorry.
logged into myself.
I thought I specifically picked to not have the live thing monetized. If so, I'm sorry. Like I said, this is one of the things that we're getting back into. So if an ad just played, who knows?
Sorry. We're just talking about the ad while it was going, so maybe there's a delay, so they
keep going
won't hear it.
to your
so my part
quality
B
of the factory, the things that you liked about the factory.
Okay, well, so that was all the things about my part 1, which is more of the like how it benefits us.
Quality is good.
From the nerd out perspective, though, I also really loved the factory tour, because when you think of an assembly line manufactured type product, I think of like matrix machines that are these big arms that are coming in
Robots.
and they're
Yeah.
and that's putting together. No, people are still touching essentially every part of this motorcycle.
Like during
engine,
assembly.
yeah, the engine cases when they're being machined, they're one at a time. And I say this as a positive note. There's a person putting the side case in a machine that's doing the machining and the deburring and all the things, but they're still maybe iRobot is more my example. There are quality control measures from the mechanical standpoint. A machine is implementing this, but there's still a human factor that goes into this that says, okay, I'm good with that, or I'm not good with that. So the levels of quality control are, I think, at the right level.
Well, we can talk about that. We can kind of go through the process and basics, but did you have more of your have 1A, 1B, 1...
Oh, and then the fact that, so I'm going to talk about the actual assembly line at the end, and I'm trying to remember which part they said we weren't allowed to say.
What? There was a thing we weren't allowed to say?
Maybe it was just the numbers on the screen.
Couldn't show it. What do you mean?
Yeah, okay. So essentially there's this long assembly line that has two people on each side.
It's like a football field-ish.
I think that's what they said,
meters.
yeah. And you can see at one end, there's just, and if you've seen any of my story highlights, I featured this assembly line because it was one of those things that was just, my brain was
It
like,
was mind-blowing.
What?
It was mind-blowing.
And then they gave us some statistics about it. So this nerd fact
They're
for
saying
me.
You think you can't say the numbers here?
I think I can.
I think you can.
I think I can. Okay. Is that at one end you start with a frame. The frame. No wheels, no nothing. The frame.
Maybe it has like tabs and wiring or
Maybe.
something on it. Like
it didn't even have wiring. It certainly didn't have wiring. It is
mostly
a blank frame at one end. By the time you get to the end of the 10 minutes elapse, essentially 10 minutes, you have a motorcycle that can be driven off the assembly line.
Yeah, they start it and ride it.
And
they
that
ride it
is every 20 to 30 seconds. And there are two of them in the Chennai factory.
Oh yeah, I forgot there are two of these final assembly like football
So
fields.
It takes from beginning to end 10 minutes. Two lines are putting off two motorcycles every 20 to 30 seconds.
I wish we could stick to our chronological order and go back a little bit.
Okay.
So when we start out of this tour, like I said, bear in mind, this is only 350. So they start by building the engine. And what struck me about this process is it's just a bunch of rows of machines. Now, if you're familiar with CNC or like modern CNC machines, it kind of looks like a little cabinet, like about the size of like a big fridge,
Like a sandblaster cabinet.
Yeah, that's true. But like
just doing all
stand
the
up
things.
as tall, like it's like 8 feet tall maybe, and like has a window you can see in. And this is basically their philosophy of this entire first step. Is basically somebody else that they get the casting in for the parts of the engine, the halves of the engine and stuff, but they're rough. They don't have the surfaces perfectly smooth to mate together and not leak. They don't have the holes drilled and tabbed, that kind of thing. They don't have the final like places where bearings and seals and stuff go, but it's like a rough casting. And basically their whole thing, this is what struck me, is that it's just a bunch of CNC machines. So the CNC, it's called computer numeric control is what CNC stands for, but it's basically just, you can tell a kind of robotic arm to go follow a certain path. And because they're doing the same parts over and over again, they have such an interesting way of using these CNC. So I think basically the cost has come down where they can just have 100 of them in a row. So the first one just puts the number on that basically says this is the QR code, and they literally use QR codes and they scan it, and it follows along, and it mates to its other half of the engine. And basically they have 350s. They have three different types. They're all black, a black and silver, and an all silver. So if you know the different types of 350s that they have, we're kind of sitting amongst some of them now. But like a Hunter is all black.
Yeah, I forgot.
So yeah,
I forgot there were
this Hunter
motorcycles
here,
behind
the
us.
engine is all black. A Classic over there is all silver, and then the Meteor is sort of in between, and some other versions will share those engines. But so they need to have a way of like tracking them so they don't accidentally put half a silver one together or whatever. So then they take the half of the engine and it will like smooth it out with the CNC. So it has a little, milling bit that will smooth it out and then drill the holes and all that stuff. Then the guy pulls it out of there. And because they're just using CNCs for everything, the next step will be clean it, or like you had mentioned, deburring. So they just have a bit go at an angle and it will just follow along and deburr the edges perfectly. Then they, like I said, cleaning, they were so proud of their cleaning process. And honestly, the parts at the end were, you could eat off them. I mean, they were perfectly clean. And that is something that I think is fascinating. We don't do a lot of different brands, and so like I don't get the opportunity to see inside of like a lot of new engines, but Royal Enfield had a, if you noticed, Royal Enfield was part of this like famous Fortnine, who's on YouTube and does a bunch of those YouTube stuff. He had this study or whatever where they did a bunch of different engines, and Royal Enfield actually came out on top of having the least amount of like metal particles in the engine. And they referenced that in the factory, and they said part of it is this cleaning process. They basically have a CNC that knows where each hole is and spends extra time blasting like a water jet that's less powerful, blasting out all the extra material from machining so that engine comes out cleaner. And then when you go to do the first service, your oil is cleaner because there's no metal particulate in the engine. So that was fascinating. Fast forward a little bit, they wind up assembling this engine. So this is part of the process. Obviously, they make all the parts of the engine. They get the various pieces in from their other manufacturers, and then they assemble the engine. What was really cool is they had a guy in a quiet room, and their standards, talk about their standards of quality. They assemble the engine and they run it. So that when they run it for the first time, they basically have this like all these little arms that come over, and one's like the spark plug and the coil and the starter and all this stuff. So they hook up the engine, they hook all that stuff up to it. This guy runs it for 1 minute. And bear in mind, these are 350s, these are the singles. And Royal Enfield sort of in the past has been famous for being kind of loud and mechanically loud, let's say rattly or whatever. And they run it for a minute in silence. This guy just sitting there at a computer basically.
Some silence. We were in there, and
so this is what I was going to say.
Quiet.
It was so sensitive that us walking in there failed that engine, so they had to run it again. But they were showing us how it worked, and they said that the official rule is 72 decibels, which if you know 72 is quiet. Like I'm louder than 72 decibels.
I was going to say, I feel like I'm
definitely
automatically louder than that.
But he said that internally, because they were ratcheting up their quality standards, they fail anything that's over 68 decibels. So 68 decibels is like an air conditioning running. And the funny thing is, you know, if you're next to a 350 running, and they don't rev it up, so it's at idle. If you're next to a 350 running, it is pretty quiet, and they idle pretty low. But when we were in this quiet room and the guy just fired up, I mean, you could barely hear it. Mm-hmm. This engine is right next to your head, just bop, 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 and it was so quiet.
Speaking of us speaking, I didn't realize that he had turned it on yet.
Yeah.
When I was talking to someone right next to me.
It's
literally
quieter than
right
like
here.
A vacuum. I mean, it was just like, it's just humming away, and it was so quiet. And so basically that's their way of saying like, some component in here sounds a little weird and we need to investigate, and if it's higher than 68 decibels. So that was pretty fascinating. Then there were some pretty cool shots. I know Baxter Cycle's got some of the other people that were with us. There's just a field of engines, and I mean like hundreds as far as you can see, all the different colors that I'm talking about. Then they go around, and they actually have robots, which are pretty cool. They move very slow, but they're like tugging along, like a train of parts. And they go down to the assembly people on the first floor, and it's really slow, but like they don't need to be slow. Like they just need to get there when they need it, so it can.
They don't need to be fast.
Yeah, they're right. You're right. So they can just like slowly move along, and they were pulling this stuff, and then they would put it together. Something that I really noticed about your just absolutely mind-blowing final assembly stage is maybe I'm being naive or whatever, I really thought going into it would be like, today is stealth black, right, and there would be 20 in a row at least or whatever, like a series of only stealth black. Every other bike was different. The case. And that seems like you need a computer system obviously to sort it out, and they have that with the QR codes and everything, but like it is a level of complication. I guess once you have that system in place, it's not a big deal. But I mean, there was literally like a classic, and then the next bike's a Meteor. And then
let's back up a little bit, because people watching may not realize that in India you can kind of build your own.
That's true. They call it make it your own, MIY. So
you can order a stealth black with engine guards already installed when you order it. So what I think the guy implied was that like today, the day we were there, was an order day.
Oh, maybe.
And that sometimes they might do
like 50 greens.
All of the same ones.
Well, Anyway, that was, I thought, so much more interesting to see the fact that like when they lined them all up, it was random. They were just totally random bikes. They have their own in-house like paint booth. The paint booth was just fascinating on its own. They were so proud. This is funny because we joke, and our guys especially joke about all the colors and stuff. And you know that Fortnite video, if you saw it on the Scrams, they make fun of all the colors. Royal Enfield in India, because everybody has a Royal Enfield, they want to be different, so they want the different colors. They love having the different colors. These guys were very proud in the paint booth. We can switch paints in 3 minutes. And so they would go in there and they say, okay, we're doing a whole run of green, and then they switch to black or whatever. 3 minutes. So they were very proud of that.
So I feel like I have a video of.
Do you want me to try to pull
Hold
it
on,
up?
let me find it first.
We're really gonna
keep talking.
Try our technical things. So another one was they would do the paint. They would do kind of like a primer thing. That's all robots. So they would send them in like racks that were clearly like standardized, and so they would have like all the side panels or whatever, and they're all in the same configuration every time. So then the robot would go through and just paint them all green or whatever, and these guys would just watch from windows outside. Then they do the clear coat or whatever, and by the time they're at the end, which is, I don't know, 20 minutes or something, they're fully painted. And
so I just mirror.
Yeah, do mirror. We're gonna try to show that video, right?
Any of you who are watching who normally text me during the live stream, don't do it.
Please don't. So or it'll show up on the thing. I guess that could be, now we're just inviting disaster. Hold on, let me move over here and see if I can get my headphones to do it.
Okay, because it's really impressive. I mean, I could stand there and watch that guy paint tanks all day.
Yeah,
and
so
jumping a little bit ahead,
go ahead,
but just mentioning it because we're going to talk about it later. But at the Motoverse event in Goa, they had a station where you could try your hand at doing painting on a tank, and it was kind of funny, the attempts that were made.
Okay, I think I'm ready to go here. Wait, maybe I'm not. Bear with us, everyone.
I'm about to show you a video of something that's very impressive, so it's worth it. Don't worry, I promise.
For some reason, whenever we do this, remember it switches, and now I can't get it to do it.
You think it's going to be skinny?
Oh, there it is.
Okay, so you'll notice that I have like a lot of videos of the factory.
Oh, look, we're in the bottom because you have it picture in picture or whatever. That's so funny. Like,
okay, so I won't watch for a second, and just there we go. But so like I have video and video and video, and then there's like dessert right there. But this is this guy.
Yeah, I think that should come across, but he's hand painting it. There's some videos on there. We were trying to set this up earlier, and this is the best version that we can get, where it's kind of like double cropped.
It's small, so I'm sorry.
This guy, the last step of the bullet tanks is to hand paint it with a like what do you call that? Pinstriping, and he hand pinstripes that final thing, and you can see him doing it.
And then there are other parts that are done with like a template and stuff, but he's doing it completely actually by hand, and it's crazy. So here was that
you see how those racks were standardized? That's exactly what I'm talking about, where when they send them through the painting, this is exactly what we're talking about. So this is the painting section, and those clearly are standardized racks where the robot's going to know that there's a tank in that position, and they can just go through the process.
And I
forgot you had such good footage of this.
Look,
this cool.
I'm telling you, I liked the factory tour probably the most. So here are those motorcycle fields you were talking about.
Yeah, look at all those engines. I mean, it's literally like hundreds of engines. There's our tour. There's me.
And then I do have video of them. Now, I can't see on my phone what is up on the screen, so you'll have to...
You can see it here. It's the final assembly thing. I was worried. So here's, pause for a second.
No, here's a guy, because I didn't edit any of his videos yet, but here's a guy walking up, and about every 30 seconds, there was a guy walking up to ride it off. And I don't know how to explain it to you, but getting emotional watching a motorcycle drive off is a little bit of a weird feeling. But it's just cool to have this line of motorcycles, and he's just driving it off. Yeah. And then
there's your feet.
Arrives at the other side where all these motorcycles need to be put on a dyno.
They test them. These guys would put them on a little dyno, and what I thought was cool about that was that they had a mirror, so they're looking in the mirror, so they don't have to like try to look underneath themselves or whatever to see what's happening, so in case things are like smoking or dripping or whatever.
But here's the where there's just all of the
All the parts
all the
waiting.
parts going on the 10-minute line there. It's just it. I don't know if I'm just nerding out about the technology
no, I think
part
you're
of
right.
this.
Do you want me to go back to the regular screen, or you?
Yeah, we can go back to that. If you want to see more of the factory tour, just ask and I will show you. But it was very cool just to see how everyone works together to put things together, and how each segment had like, here's my area and here's what I'm responsible for the day, and the mix of mechanical and human hands to put it together just was interesting to me.
The parts where you want precision, you got precision. The parts where you want someone's like judgment, you have that. I mean, they really had sorted it out. You know what's really funny? So Royal Enfield last year made 860,000 motorcycles. That's how many they produced. They are basically at half capacity. That's what they kept saying. We could do like 800,000 at this factory and 800,000 at the other factory, and they were building another factory that was just painting and plating that isn't even up yet. And so basically, theoretically, they could do full, 1.6 million motorcycles a year. I don't know that there is the demand for that yet, but it's pretty crazy to know that they have that capability. And I mean, it's fascinating that they could make that many bikes, and you sell 30 or 50,000 350s a month. I mean, yeah, get busy producing them. And it's funny because you had mentioned this where, okay, Royal Enfield's big trick is to make what has become a extremely high quality motorcycle, but for such a cheap price. The Hunter is the cheapest one.
Whoa. We don't say cheap.
Inexpensive price.
Thank you.
The Hunter is just over $4,000 in America, US or MSRP, and the way that they're doing it is scale. It's obviously labor costs in India are pretty cheap too, but if everything's produced internal to India, then their costs are cheaper, their transportation stuff's cheaper, getting the parts all in the same building is cheaper, but also it's the scale, it's the economies of scale, is the fact that I always talk about this, but the throttle cable is $3 in America retail. So they're just going to these guys and saying, we can produce 1.6 million motorcycles a year. We're going to need 1.6 million throttle cables. How do we get those prices down? And the Indian customers especially are very demanding as far as prices go. So
I think we in the biz like to call that price conscious.
They are extremely. So they don't want to, if something costs more money or whatever, they're just are very grumpy about it. So I think they're feeling those pressures. Okay, so
sensitive to price fluctuations.
So do you have more? I'm sure that we could talk a lot about the factory, but I'm trying to get us moving along chronologically. Do you have more to talk about the factory? Or
yes, I have one question that Jason's asking. That so do they test the bike and then partially disassemble to crate them and ship them overseas?
Maybe you haven't seen the bikes when they arrive here. They're mostly together. And they have a mile on them, and it's because of the last guy that sits and runs it on the dyno, and then they actually do take a lap outside.
So we're gonna delve into that question more, because I think that there could be a disconnect between what you know as mostly together and what a customer might think means mostly together. They roll them off the assembly line, test them, make sure there's no catastrophic issues, but there's still an hour of putting the motorcycle together from a PDI standpoint.
Yes.
So
I think that, but basically like motorcycles I've seen in the past, every once in a while a Mecum or different auctions or whatever, you'll see still in the box and the front end is off, or in the back end, or it has to put the swing arm off on or whatever. When a Royal Enfield arrives here, which we'll get to tomorrow, Super Meteors, they're 98% complete. We don't have to assemble the front end or anything like that.
We're not mounting tires or putting forks
a
on
lot
or anything.
of checks, and they don't have the battery in them. They don't travel with the battery in them. The the keys are zip tied off to the side and everything. So there's assembly stuff you have to do. You have to put the mirrors on. Himalayans and Scrams require a little bit more, where you have to actually adjust the handlebars because they're taller, so they don't quite fit in the crates the way they are. So the handlebars are rolled down, but there's not like putting it together. So they're not on their end. They're not really disassembling it. They probably don't have mirrors when they're even doing their checks. So the mirrors have never been on it. But as far as like, and I hope this doesn't come across, I think that's what you're conscious of, but this doesn't come across as like, we're not doing a PDI. Like, you still want us to check it. We do a test ride, that kind of thing. So there's still things that happen.
Yes, there's things that happen from the last time that they have been tested at the factory to when they get to us.
But disassembling is not the right way to think about it. They're not taking anything apart. It was a running motorcycle when it went on there. They're definitely taking the battery out, but the fluids and all the rest of that stuff is in it. There's no gas in it.
Okay, so I'm going to just answer a very quick question. It's not necessarily related to anything with this, but will you guys be going to the Mika motorcycle auction in January? The answer is yes. Dylan and Ken will be going in January. We'll probably talk.
Is this my guy, Flat Cap Cafe Racer? Oh, yeah, I'll see you there, buddy. Hopefully, if he's going.
So for those who don't know what that is, the Mika motorcycle auction is in Vegas, and it is the largest motorcycle auction where we have gotten the majority of our vintage.
I think we're up to at least 30 bikes that we bought there. We buy a lot of bikes.
Sold maybe 20 of those because Ken ends up keeping half of them.
Anyway, it's a great time. It's the pulse of what bikes are going for. There's obviously a sort of little bit of like auction fever or whatever. Maybe the prices are a little inflated, but it's a great time. We'll
probably have a Quittin Time between now and then.
Oh, definitely.
And definitely have content that you'll be able to watch while he's there, so you won't miss it. The other one is, it always messes with my Harley Davidson riding brethren when I tell them how much a Himalayan part costs.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's shocking. Like, Harley's an easy one to pick on, but like, Harley exhaust or a BMW exhaust or some fancier, more expensive bikes, the exhaust cost half of what a Himalayan costs. And then when you buy the exhaust for a Himalayan or whatever, the whole system is $500, and you've got a brand new stainless steel system, the entire thing. Or if you drop it and you need a new lever or mirror, those are $5 each. I mean, it's insane.
Not to say, so as a person who also likes Harley Davidson motorcycles, and owns two, I think sometimes this conversation can sound like, because we have this conversation with people all the time. They come in and they're a Harley fan and they're like, oh, well, you don't want me to show up. It's like, no, that's not it at all. What it is saying is that you are getting an affordable motorcycle that is made in a quality manner, that has a warranty and all of that stuff. They're not comparable. That's the culmination of this thought, is that if you want a $30,000 or $20,000 Harley Davidson or Indian or whatever, that is one thing. If you want, the same thing but in a Royal Enfield, you're not going to get that. Well, you and I are very much not like this Ford versus Chevy, kind of thing. Yes, they all have their merits. They all have their
any patience for that kind of talk.
Detraction. I mean, there are some detractions.
It's completely different philosophically. Royal Enfields are mostly smaller bikes. They're more about like, they're always talking about pure cruising or pure motorcycling or whatever. They're more simple. They're more, they're cheaper, but I mean, you said about inexpensive. You could buy 3 or 4 or whatever for what you might pay for another bike. That's the world that it lives in. It's not trying to be your one and only bike, at least in the US.
It can be. I mean, I have some very strong feelings about my lowrider. I have some very strong feelings about the Super Meteor. Yeah. They are just different Himalayan feelings. So
Himalayan.
If you do have to buy, or are only in the position to be able to buy one motorcycle, you have to make a little bit of different choices. But do I compare, and I have this conversation with customers all the time or friends, do I compare my Himalayan to my lowrider? Absolutely not. They're not different. They're different entirely, but it's still completely separately a mutually exclusive conversation to talk about the ridiculousness of the low prices for a lever on a Himalayan.
Yeah. But I mean, it's whatever. We could talk about it forever, and that's just the philosophy of this. The Royal Enfield stuff is that you can experience the vast majority of what it's like to have a motorcycle and be out in the world on a motorcycle for very inexpensive. You also can spend $20,000 and have all of the benefits that go along with that, which is this heritage and the name and the network. There's a Harley Davidson dealership at every other exit on the highway.
Yeah.
And the parts are really nice. The seat is really nice. The exhaust is really nice. The engineering that went into the engine is very nice. It feels, I don't know if it feels like it's $20,000, but it feels really nice to ride. And so that's just a different thing, you know? It's not better or worse or whatever, in my opinion. It's different.
I do feel like that's exactly what it boils down to. It's not better or worse. It is different.
Yeah,
and I love having
different folks
a motorcycle on both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the chronology of this. Did you have more to talk about at the factory?
I feel, sorry, we had a lot of good comments that I would like to share concerning
Go ahead.
Different.
Sure.
So Ray was talking about his Himalayan named Chirpy. I rode Chirpy today and loved it. It's my one and only right now.
Oh, nice. But it's cold. I'm impressed.
Anna says, I'm flabbergasted. It's also inexpensive, and the bikes and parts both crazy. Yeah. And she has a lot of experience with Harley
and a Grom
and has a Grom. I'm not sure remotely what the cost things were with that, but I know that, you know, having a Ninja and a Himalayan and
the Ninja too,
Sportster and now a lowrider, that like,
how many bikes does she have? That was like a list.
And that she should get a GT. It's fine.
She would like a GT, especially a red one.
But like, yeah, if you have experience with only buying, you know, expensive bike parts, it's like, oh, I can buy a way less expensive part. Anyway, and then someone was saying I have a 22 Harley and the 23 BMW, and the bike I ride most is the Hunter.
Yeah, that's Dan who rode here. I can't even remember what he rode here. BMW? I don't remember. Maybe does it a Pan America?
We have a lot of friends who have like multiple motorcycles, and they ride them to the shop.
But yeah, I mean that is true. We've gotten a little sidetracked.
I will controversially say that the Hunter is what the Grom is trying to be.
I know. You're going to start a fight here, especially with Anna. But we've gotten off topic, but I do agree that sometimes if your option is 700-pound motorcycle or 400-pound motorcycle, it's easier to hop on the little zippy thing and just kind of, I'm gonna just commute to work 10 minutes or whatever, and it's a lot easier.
Which I think is a good segue into how many super meteors we saw in Goa.
Okay.
Because I'm done with the.
Well, if you're done with the factory, then technically we need to talk about
the innovation center
with the
research.
Headquarters. The headquarters is what it's called.
So we did not see any new model year, even though model year doesn't really exist in the Royal Enfield world, but no new model year bikes on the testing machines. But we saw, except for the super meter in the tunnel.
You've really jumped ahead. So we went we went to the headquarters, the Royal Enfield's.
Anna said, "Don't worry about how many bikes I have."
Yeah, okay, I won't. So the Royal Enfield headquarters, it's like, well, you and I both went to Ohio State, but it's very similar to Ohio State's campus. We sat down in like a lecture meeting room, and there was a projector up top and like nice seats, and it was very like kind of hip office spacey. You know, you're thinking of like
pop-up meeting spaces.
Yeah, but I was thinking like a tech startup or whatever, and these guys are very young, like college-y, smart engineer types walking around, and I'm trying to give the idea of what it was like. And this guy,
we weren't allowed to take a lot of photos here.
Yeah,
this was specifically a no photo.
You probably still have the thing on your camera, right?
Oh yeah, I did keep it.
They put a blue thing over our camera lenses. You obviously not on your lens anymore,
but I kept it as a souvenir.
But they put a sticker over our thing and said no photos. So when you're going in there, this guy's like, we're going to go on a tour, and so he walks through the break room. And in the break room was a brand new Himalayan 450, and we just like. I don't have a photo at the research center. Obviously not.
But I have one when we get to the.
We could show
Goa
it. But so
section.
Brand new Himalayan 450. They were announcing it that weekend when we were there at Motoverse, but they had one in the office, you know, because they designed it and they were doing testing and stuff there and everything. But they had the bike just sitting there like in the lunchroom, and people were walking by. So we just stuck and the guy's like trying to
he's trying to like herd us along, and we're like, I want to look at that, please.
Yeah, so we got to look at that and sit on it, and
I was amazed. So we have seen photos, and I think before we left we had seen very few videos
of the Himalayan
450.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that struck me about that specific moment when we walked in is we were like, yeah, I'd love to see it in person. Yeah. But it surprised me because it wasn't just the North American group together. We are going to talk very little about the rest of the group.
North and South America together.
But I was amazed at how it seemed like the first time a lot of the people in the group had ever seen a 450 in photo or video.
They didn't. We're real nerds, and we look at all the stuff that come out. And I watched
spy photos,
I watched
spy
the
video.
videos. Which, by the way, we saw the guy from Bike Wale, and I pointed him out, and then he has a video of being in that one area we had just seen him going to. Anyway, so we saw the Himalayan. They had a Super Meteor. They had a Bullet, all just sitting there because there's their newest
They had
ones.
neon signs of all the logos that I want to buy for the shop.
They had rows of people on computers with their screens. You can see their screens. That was why I couldn't take photos because, like, who knows what's on their screen, right? These are guys working on like new parts. Royal Enfield, it is a little inside baseball, but I'm sorry, it just means we're talking shop. That other people might
insider
not.
Trading.
Yeah, no. But that other people might not realize. But on Royal Enfield, when they come up with a part, for example, like something that they would change a lot, like the air filter or the levers or something, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 /A/B/C/D. Those are all different iterations, and those guys and girls, actually, the one I'm thinking of was a woman that was like an engineer designer, was doing a triple tree. So sometimes they call it top clamp. I think it's an only American thing where we call it triple tree, but
that explains why people have looked at me like I'm crazy when I say that.
Sometimes they call it a top clamp or a fork clamp or something like that. Yeah. I don't know what I mean. Triple tree is a little exotic of a term, but anyway, she was designing like a new one, and so maybe they had failures, or improvements, or it could be made cheaper or something. But they're basically making another iteration, and so when she's done with that, that's going to be /H or something, like some further down the line thing. And there was just like 20 people currently doing that, and they had like a part to hold, and they're like modeling it in CAD and stuff. So that was cool to see all that. We go down, it was a really big building, and we walk down these stairs and stuff, and then there was a testing floor.
They love stairs.
They did. No elevators ever. And it was 90 degrees, American degrees. So when we got down to the bottom floor, they're doing testing. And so like they had a Himalayan 450, and they're testing the center stand, and there was literally a machine that just all day
that someone built.
Yeah.
This is not like a
you can't.
You ordered this off of Uline. This is a machine that someone was like, I need to fix this problem.
Made it. Yeah.
So not only do they have people whose job it is to test the thing, but to make the machines to test the thing.
Yeah. That was a big part of what they did there. So the bike would be sitting there and had like a thing holding it together, or holding it in place, and because it's not on the side stand anymore or whatever, and a lever would like be the foot and push down on the center stand, and then they would kind of like pull it back on the center stand, and then they'd knock it forward off the center stand, and then just do it again.
So they had to make the machine be able to catch the bike when it goes forward off the center stand,
break it or whatever,
and then have the force to lift it back onto this. I mean, it was like what is that? Kinetics.
I don't know what you mean.
It's like a plastic toy. It's like, I'm thinking of Lincoln Logs, but that's
like
too simple.
Kinects.
Yes, it's like adult.
Yeah, it was like that, and they were all air,
hydraulic
air pressure or whatever. So it was like, psh, and it just slam it back down on the ground, and then it would lift it up. Very cool. So basically, they're doing like a million tests to make sure the center stand isn't going to like the lever's going to break off if you kick it, if you push your foot down on it 100 times or whatever. So like they're testing all that, and a lot of the things that they were testing is things they don't even make, like their third party parts.
It seemed to be that was more of what they were testing.
So like the speedometer, we just had a machine that would just rev it up and then down and then up and then down a million times,
and there was a temperature changer.
A chamber.
Yeah, and I thought that was pretty interesting, because I think that probably came after they realized that certain speedometers have temperature issues. There was an issue.
This is a supplier thing for Royal Enfield, but there was an issue with the 350s early on, where on a hot day in the sun, the speedometer needle would stick, so you think you're going 80 and you're going 10 or something. So they have a temperature chamber. They'll basically increase the temperature, decrease it, get really cold, and try the electronics at all those different temperatures. They were just testing like crazy. That was a big theme, and I don't know if they were just trying to impress us or impress this on us, but quality and testing was just, they would just, I mean, you think about the scale of things that they're making almost 1 million motorcycles a year. Their goal was 1 million for 2024, and if they're going to do that, they just can't afford mistakes and failures and stuff like that. If there's a mistake with the Himalayan and they just started production on 250,000 of them, that's going to be a big error.
So speaking of the new Himalayan, Mike brought up that, because we were talking about that we watched like the spy information and stuff, that he was saying that was the one that Norley was riding.
Oh yeah,
they put a pretty
boots.
Decent focus on the development of the 450 and how they were talking about how they took feedback from people like Norley, who is Itchy Boots, if you don't know, and she was in India and decided to buy the original Himalayan 411 quite a number of years ago, before she started her channel, and rode it from India back to Norway.
Is that right? She's
the
from
Netherlands.
But
the Netherlands.
But that was her first season or whatever.
Yes.
She rode all around.
But then they invited her, because she has done several review videos on the Himalayan 411 and talked about how
she's not really a reviewer. She's more like, this is what happened in the 25,000 kilometers I did.
Yes, and she makes a good point, or makes the point that she isn't a reviewer. So the fact that she felt inclined to do those several videos out of her seasons that do review it, I think is interesting. And then they made a point of pointing out that they invited her to have input on the new 450 from someone who has quite literally put probably the most miles on a Himalayan.
A lot of miles, kilometers. She put a lot of kilometers, 0 miles, and then
when she's riding in the United States, she put on miles.
No miles, but then she is basically an ambassador. I mean, when we first started, every single person who bought a Himalayan was like, "Have you guys seen Itchy Boots?" And
yeah,
we're like, yeah,
and we're like,
seen Itchy Boots.
That's actually how we kind of found out about Royal Enfield in the first place.
Yeah, so she's a great sort of brand ambassador out there in the world, and she got one of the first pre-production. Who knows about the timing when she actually got that or whatever, and she made her videos. But she did a whole series.
She is an
in
enigma
India.
to me about the timing of her things. I can't keep time.
Now she's back in Africa. How long ago was that? I don't know.
Time doesn't exist to me as it is, but then when I'm like trying to keep track of other people's timelines, I just can't handle it.
Okay, so speaking of timelines, great segue, Nicole. You're a real professional. So the factory or the headquarters, they did a lot of testing there. They had a lot of dynos. They actually had bikes of other makes that they were like, I don't know if reverse engineering is maybe too grandiose of a term, but they were sort of benchmarking against these other bikes, which was pretty interesting. They had basically a whole shop. They were doing very experimental stuff with like, I never saw any 3D printers, which I thought they might have, but they had like castings of,
so they seem like they skipped the 3D printing process at all and just like had a welding table.
These guys in this one section at the very end of the tour were doing off the wall stuff. They had a 650 engine with a 2-into-1 intake with this really long single intake runner, and the guy's like tapping it out of the mold, like he just had it made. And
I'll just have this cast. It's fine.
And they were just testing it. Like, what if we did a single throttle body on a 650 just to see? Which I've heard they might do on the Scrambler version that they might come out with in the future. Thing that was interesting is, if you've ever seen these videos, they had a guy, like a mannequin on it, and they were just shaking him and the whole thing. And it's really funny to watch this like,
he's just like
serene look on his face, and he's like being shaken to death. And to see what fails on the bike first and all this stuff. They had a bunch of dyno stuff. They had dynos with temperature.
That wasn't for his fake whiplash. Just like put a little brace on it, because I mean they were really like
shaking the crap,
giving him the surface of the moon treatment.
Yeah. So then when they would need to see what fails, then they would have temperature on the dyno. So the engine's running in a very cold temperature. The engine's running in a very hot temperature, and you could walk into this room and it was like freezing cold in the room. It's very cool. They had in one engine, and the guy just said, "Oh, that's a super meteor engine," and it was definitely the shotgun engine, which they then released at Motoverse. But at the time, which was 2 days before this, nobody knew about the shotgun. So he said, "Oh, it's super meteor." I was like, "Why is it all black? That doesn't seem right." And then it turns out they were testing
like
shotguns.
He kind of acted like he learned a new word and said media embargo a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
A new phrase.
So anyway, they had all that. They had an anechoic chamber. If you know what that is, it's like a quiet room. And they were like, people get monitored and they can't be in here more than an hour. That's a whole divergent subject that we won't get into. But basically, you can go crazy if you stay in this room with 0 echoes and no sound and whatever. So they had testing in there, and they were really dialing in. And I don't know if you've been in the presence of a super meteor yet, because they're relatively new, but it really does feel like they've dialed in the sound. It's quiet where it should be mechanically. There's no clicking, clacking, ticking, but it also has a little bit of a breathy rumble to it for a stock bike. They really are getting good.
Which
at
is
those
funny
things.
because I feel like the average Indian person who comes into our shop wants the classic
Oh yeah, they want
bullet
more.
sound.
They want more noise.
They want more noise.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if
That's
that's
true.
because in India it's kind of loud.
Yeah.
You have a lot of noise going on, and so you want to be able to hear your motorcycle
You get
over
attention.
that,
Everybody's got a bike, so you want a louder one. Yeah.
or a distinctive one,
Yeah.
because a lot of the scooters didn't really
Yeah.
make a whole lot of
No,
noise.
of course.
But then they have to weigh that with exporting internationally, where they just cannot have that.
And part of the new, like, they call it BS 5 and 6 there, or 4, 5, and 6, or Euro 5 and Euro 5 Plus is the new one. Part of those regulations include a noise component, so it can only be so loud. Okay, so let's...
We have one question
Go
about
ahead.
the factory
Yeah.
type thing. I don't
Okay.
know if this is going to be answerable, because I don't think I saw anything
Go
about
ahead.
this.
What is it? Shoot.
But were they making an active suspension to change ride height when stopped or at speed? I feel like
No.
this is right
No,
on
no,
the cusp of the kind of technology that I don't think Royal Enfield's really going to go into.
They mean, maybe eventually, they mean like the Pan America. You know, the Pan America,
Yeah.
when you come to a stop, it lowers so that you can put your foot down or whatever. Nothing like that.
I don't
haven't seen
think,
anything like
I
that.
don't think that there's, even with the Himalayan 450 being a little bit
I think,
taller
I never
feeling?
actually noticed this, but the Himalayan 450, I've read that it has some way of adjusting the seat height. I don't know if it's on the fly, like you can just turn a knob or whatever, or if you have to actually like
I don't
take
think
it off.
so. We're going to talk about Motoverse in a little bit, but I asked the first time we went to the base camp, not the second time when I talked to the designer of the display, but the first time we went over there, he talked about adjustable seat height, and I think that it is like a mechanical adjustment.
You just mount it in a different place or something.
Maybe.
So yeah, that's that at the moment. That's as far in that direction as they get. Okay, so if you're, this is what I'm asking. If you feel like you're done with the headquarters,
The last thing about the really the factory, was that we had lunch at the factory, and it was delicious.
they feed all the all the workers. We ate where they ate.
Everywhere we went, every time we went somewhere, there was food, and
Food was
we
great.
ate it.
Yeah,
it was
and
delicious.
we never got sick because of it. Okay, so I think everyone's expecting like Whitey's going to get sick.
I was going to say that in a nicer way. When one expands their culinary palate.
I'm trying to move us along here.
Okay.
Okay, so then we might as well skip ahead. We fly across the country, and
Can I just say one time, because it happened so many times to me, but just one time, something that I realized when we were flying inside India is that all of my camera equipment looks like I'm carrying guns.
yeah.
And I got stopped every time.
It is fun when you're flying internationally, fun, but also anxiety producing, where you have no idea where to go, what to do. Like in the
because
US,
we got
I kind of
separated
just, like,
on
know
purpose.
where to go.
Yeah,
they were
like,
women,
no, you have to go over there.
Women have a different line. In the US, they would never do that.
Right.
So it was kind of weird to do. And then someone had handed me their bottle of water and said, "Oh, do you want this? I'm never going to be able to take off through security." And I said, I don't think they have that kind of rule, because that's just a made up American rule. And it turned out it didn't matter.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
The guy just said,
you put it through the scanner, but it didn't matter.
Put it on the thing and scan it. No problem. So anyway, we make it through there, but you got stopped a little bit because all your stuff looked like guns.
They turned the little
And you're in America,
TV
and
around.
they said you were Wild West.
They turned the
Cowboy.
scan screen around and show you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yep, I clearly
This is
have.
not a mid-90s comedy routine about the airlines. How was the food in the airline?
The food on the plane was delicious.
I'm skipping ahead. I'm skipping it. So
We're going to talk about food, okay?
No, we've already been live for 2 hours. Is that right? I can't see.
No.
So anyway,
We have not.
as the host, I'm the Conan O'Brien of this train.
Why do you make all of these references when you absolutely know?
Conan O'Brien, you got Pumpkinhead. So anyway, we're going to move forward to Motoverse. We fly across the country. We go to Motoverse.
Flying across the country is 1 hour.
That's true. It was a quick flight. It was an easy flight compared to
I just feel like you're making the
flights.
implication it's like the 6 hours for.
It was it's kind of a V shaped, and we flew across the skinnier part.
We flew coast to coast.
Yeah, definitely. That's true, but it didn't take forever. And then we go to Motoverse. It was so hot. Like, I cannot express to you how hot it was. And I lived in Florida for 4 years. And Anna,
we went to
Anna knows about it.
Yes, Anna
She's
knows
still
about
here.
it. And we went to Kentucky Kickdown a couple years ago, where it was what we thought was the hottest we've ever been on the planet.
It was so hot. It was kind of hot where you just abandon, like, self-respect and decency, and you can see maybe the videos where I'm just wearing this headband like cool headband, like just to cool down, and we're just wearing
which
shorts.
we had to buy.
We're not shorts people.
No, we're not.
And we're wearing
shorts,
of course, and you just is like, I'm dying. And you're trying to drink water, which of course is an extra difficult thing to do because we have to filter everything. Anyway, the Motoverse, like I said before, it was like any of those huge events. Probably something like Sturgis, which I've never been to, but I definitely have been to Mid-Ohio Vintage Days. There's 10,000 motorcycles at Mid-Ohio, and there's all these booths and different events and stuff. It was that, but only Royal Enfield. And in the crowd, or in the parking lots, was like 90%. That's probably safe to say. 90%, at least 80% Royal Enfield.
I was going to say, I think you could go a little bit over 90%.
That's all the traffic.
I have
was Royal Enfield.
Some videos.
Do you want to show them?
Yeah.
Oh, every time I gotta put my little over.
So we have a
let me know when you're ready.
habit of just going to the parking lot of motorcycle events and just looking.
Yeah, like a good one here that's like this for parking lots is the Devil's Staircase, which is down in Oregonia, which is maybe an hour and a half from here, and it's a hill climb event for the AMA, like kind of like off-road hill climb.
Speaking of events, you actually skipped the Royal Enfield Cafe Garage.
Yeah, I forgot. In the very beginning of the day, we went to Motoverse. We went to the Royal Enfield Garage Cafe. We had a video that came out about the Himalayan 450 first look, where we actually got to like sit there and sit on it and see and spend some time looking at all the little details.
I might be showing.
You ready?
The video, yeah.
I'm not. You know how it might take us. Oh, we're right into it. Perfect. Okay, so. What was your point of showing this video?
I'm just
talking
looking,
about the bikes in the parking lot? There you go.
There we go.
This was like the edge of the parking lot, and these guys were just like climbing this hill. And if you notice, this is not like parked for a photo opportunity. This is just fields of Royal Enfield. So that's like a bullet that's right there from, who knows, earlier. That's an old one with a kickstart. And it's crazy how many Royal Enfields. And so the thing that you notice about that kind of thing when it comes to all the Royal Enfields, the parking lot and stuff like that, that's what I'm talking about. Devil's Staircase Hill Climb. It's 90% Harleys there. There I am. I don't have my headband of there it is. It is on my waist though. But so you go to the parking lot, it's mostly Harleys there. It's like that. It's like we were in I forgot I'm not on camera here, but we were like in an alternative universe where the same thing that Harley is in the US, Royal Enfield is there. And it's just like an alternative universe where there's only one option, and it's Royal Enfield. It's crazy how many there are. And because of that, even more, way more than we customize Harleys here in the US, they customize their bikes. So it was actually difficult to find a stock bike.
You would see a row of 5 Himalayans in a row, and they all look almost like a different motorcycle.
And they would put different custom wraps on there. They would have, I mean, you're seeing a little bit of it there, but obviously we're not as zoomed in or looking at the details of some of these bikes. But there's some idiot talking on the screen. But so they would have exhausts and handlebars and different paint and stickers and just all kinds of these engine guards. And you're seeing some of it here. See how that guy has a red windscreen and different engine guards. The guy next to him has a different engine guard than comes on stock. And there's a Super Meteor in there. You're seeing a lot of, I mean, I'm just trying to emphasize how many bikes were custom. It was shocking. It was startling. Another thing that I noticed, if we were really trying to guess, you're seeing a lot of Himalayans. This is illustrating my point. Himalayans were the most common ones. That sounds crazy, but there was definitely more Himalayans there than anyone. There's a 450 than any other type of bike. You see some of the old UCEs and stuff like that. I say UCE is unit construction engine, so basically 09 to 2020 bullets. But look how many Himalayans there are. And some of this might have been us sort of cherry picking what looked like a good setup of bikes in a row, but really this is typical of how it looked. There was so many Himalayans, and they're all custom, and there was entire clubs that would show up on Himalayans. What do you mean? It's still working.
Okay. It's just very delayed.
This is all just the parking lot, and this is something that you and I do, and this is how you started first saying that, was you and I love to go to a motorcycle event, Fuel Cleveland, something like that people can ride to, or the hill climb, like I said, or whatever it is, the vintage days, and walk through the parking lot and see what people rode there. All these bikes were ridden there. What we're looking at now is 450. So they were doing test rides of 450s. We did not test ride a 450. The traffic situation was crazy. We're not even sure how it works with the international license. We didn't have our helmets, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a lot to do. And so we just kind of skipped on that one. But there were probably 100 Himalayan 450s at the event.
And I think that we discovered that not only from that big grouping of them, but because there were little media sticker, like counting stickers. And I saw one that at least started with a 9.
Yeah, and so you had just, the video before this, you had panned across the test ride bikes. How many do you think were there? 30? 50?
50.
A lot.
50.
Like a crazy amount. Look, and you're seeing it. You're seeing it here on the screen. So
bikes were still arriving back from test rides at this point. When we were exiting, because this is when we were leaving the first day.
Yeah.
Exiting the area, there were bikes riding in at that point. So there were still some out on test rides at that point.
So the 450s, these are the top 2 models, 2 tiers. They're doing tiers. The current Himalayan, everything costs the same. The new one is going to have kind of fancier tiers, and these are all the top ones that they're doing for test rides. And there were so many of them, and then in the parking lot or being ridden around by who knows, press, media, influencers, whoever, there was like another 50 or so. There was probably 100 just spread throughout. So it was crazy to see this bike that they hadn't even officially announced yet until the end of day 1. The Himalayan 450. It was just everywhere. So let's back up for a second. This event, we talk about Royal Enfield and how they were just everywhere. They had customs, they had booths, they had races, they had all the stuff that we would have at these other events, like
they had concerts,
vintage days,
which is the thing is different. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. They really did a good job with the music. The music was, first of all, good, but there was like 4 stages. I think there were maybe 3 stages. And they were just doing a really good job of incorporating music into this. If you ever go to these big events, it's kind of physically taxing. It's an arduous thing to just walk in this giant field all day. Hey, let's go look at this, and let's go look at this, and it's hot, and it's crowded, and it's hard to maybe get water and food and all that stuff. So you do get tired, and you're sort of thinking, I'll sit down for a minute. They just had such a clever, from an event planning perspective and an events perspective, they did such a good job.
You saw this weird sink that I found at a hotel we stayed at.
Is that part of the screens you went through?
Scan back.
But the music stages and everything, they did such a good job of just having a variety of things. Oh, I'm worried that our screen froze.
No, I paused it. Oh.
You're still playing, but we're frozen here. I'm a little worried that our...
Okay, let me go back in.
Let me switch to this. Nope, we're frozen. We're not really frozen if that's the case for you guys. We might have lost our camera. This is OBS. If you guys know that would be that's totally crazy that it dropped the camera. Maybe it's because of something you were doing, like I'm not blaming you, but I mean, software wise, it didn't like it.
Okay, let me stop mirroring. Did we lose camera?
It appears as though we did.
It's still
sound is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So you still have sound. Okay.
Yeah,
so
but that's crazy.
So I'm just gonna talk while you're trying to figure that out.
This is the standard OBS, and it really had a problem there with the camera.
So I'm gonna talk about some of the comments that were in the chat while you're fixing that. So Dylan was talking about the music, and I think that the only event, and we've never been to Sturgis, but I've heard that Sturgis has music, and that's the closest event to compare this to from that perspective of having entertainment that isn't just motorcycle races and vendors and stuff like that. So, Mike, I don't know what Little Sturgis is, but you said Little Sturgis was 100 degrees plus, but it was awesome. Anna's asking, is it pretty easy to find aftermarket parts for the Royal Enfield in general, or is it just there? Interestingly enough, aftermarket parts for Royal Enfields there were quite plentiful, and I know you were talking about some of the I
had to unplug it and plug it back in for all you IT nerds in the chat. Can you believe that?
That would be the first thing I would think to do.
Oh my god! I mean, that's the third thing I did, but still.
Okay, so stories in a dark room. That's not a bad. I mean, that's just what a podcast
we
is.
missed Halloween for that, though, but that's spooky.
So Anna was asking, is it pretty easy to find aftermarket parts for Royal Enfield in general, or is it just there? So I feel like here...
Little harder here.
It's a little harder here.
There, for example, Anna, there's this cool like cafe racer kit that I love, and the cost is so inexpensive. It's $100 for this full fairing kit with a new windscreen and all these different tail tidy things, but the shipping is $400. So if you're in India and you want to do some pretty extreme custom stuff, as far as what we think about cost and stuff like that, very inexpensive.
Well, we talked to a couple of vendors there that seemed very excited to talk to people from North America in the standpoint of like they'd love to get their stuff here, but it's just not here.
I'd love
yet.
to figure out the logistics of how to do that, but they had handlebars and pannier rails and different seats and all that stuff. Very inexpensive,
and not
very
that those things
easy
don't
to get.
exist from Royal Enfield as I don't know what to call it. It's not. It is aftermarket, but it's not aftermarket. It's
the GMA. You mean?
Yeah.
Genuine motorcycle accessories.
I don't actually know what that would be called from a layperson's perspective, but things from Royal Enfield, legit from Royal Enfield parts that you can buy after the fact, accessories after the fact.
Yeah.
Accessory to murder after the fact. But the thing that I like. Sorry, that was my chair.
I was worried something fell over.
Anyway, there are things, for Royal Enfields in general. But what I liked about these other companies is that there was a variety of styles of those things.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not something that we necessarily have within Royal Enfield. But we're going to talk about the Super Meteor and the Shotgun probably in a short minute. But they seem to be closing the gap between when accessories are available after a motorcycle is released, which has
I think
been...
in India they're better at it. If you're talking, I don't know, specifically talking about here or in India, but India much better. You can get anything you want, and they have a crazy variety as engine guards and exhausts and all that stuff. Here, less so, but still pretty easy to do. As far as like, there's a couple different brands that will ship here, or eBay if you can't find something or whatever like that. So,
but I think the issue is that now that we have these more like concrete ideas of what companies make legit parts for aftermarket parts, is a little bit different than just going on eBay and being someone saying, I'm making a Royal Enfield part.
But
and I guess I meant
buying it from reputable, known people, but through eBay because you get better shipping or better payment processing and all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we haven't really, you and I have not discussed this yet, but I think that we'll look into...
We'll talk about this when we get home.
We'll talk about this after Quittin Time.
Back in the U.S.
But more looking at more of those like companies that vended. If they were invited to vend or accepted to vend at an official Royal Enfield event, I feel confidence in establishing a relationship to import those things here.
Yeah. So, okay. So I think I wanted to go, unless you have specific things to bring up from the chat, I wanted to keep
Yes, one more thing.
Go ahead.
Did we see any of the new tubeless rims on a 450?
Oh, yeah, I saw that question. Apparently, they call this homologated, but that means like safe for the roads, like approved for the roads. And apparently those are not homologated yet. So they do exist. They will be a thing as far as tubeless wheels, but they are not currently on any of the bikes that we saw. I only saw tube type wheels, and that was just universally, that's the rumor we kept hearing from official people, was they're not currently homologated, but they will be by the time they actually go on sale in India, which is probably a month from now or whatever. I think you can pre-order for now if you're in India. In the US, don't even ask. It's not yet. Okay, so describing Motoverse, it's huge. It's a big area. There's a lot. There's a whole. They were big on experiences. People, that was the big thing, is like ride your bike here, and then you can do some sort of like light racing, hill climbing stuff in the back. But also there was like a adventure course, which was like drive down through water, up over some hills, kind of washboardy, like obstacle course, but light and safe, and anyone can do it. And you could ride your Himalayan and do that. And then we saw shooting. So it was like Nerf guns. And then one guy was on the back and one guy's riding, and they would go kind of slow and they would shoot at like a moving target, and they shoot at still targets. And that was a competition.
Honestly, it looked like way more organized field games that you tend to have at more motorcycle events. And I thought that was pretty interesting, because they're like, oh no, this is like paging the next contestant, but it's like together. The games that you would do, silly games. And it was like and that's something you were talking about with the clubs, the riding groups. They all get matching outfits and ride together, but it's not like gangs. It's just riding clubs.
We would call those, well, in America, this is silly, but we have gangs and we kind of call them motorcycle clubs. They were definitely more clubs, and they kind of looked like tough guys, but they were silly guys
with arms around each other at the concert, just like having a good time.
Just being silly and being very non-threatening is the difference that you see from sort of the American culture to the Indian culture in this specific regard.
Motorcycling being more of a commuter activity for people in India. The people who build the community aren't coming from a outlaw perspective.
Yeah, they were more just a camaraderie and community and stuff like that. They wear the same shirts. They would show up, and they did have vests, kind of what we think of as the vests. And then they had drums, and they'd play drums and trumpets and make noise as they would enter, so everyone can see this club is here. You know, they were the Kings was one of them, and the King's Army was another, and they did these different stuff, and they'd show up. And there is some breakdown on Royal Enfield's official channel where they show those guys and they show them showing up and stuff, and it was fun, but it was all very lighthearted. They're not like trying to be in another group's face. It was all like, oh, there's those guys, they're crazy, we'll do crazy stuff too. More like sports, where you start your chant and we'll start our chant, and they would just kind of like very positive and stuff. So that was cool to see. A lot of that was happening, and those guys would all roll up together, and they would all be on their Himalayas or whatever.
This is something that you missed from the dealer conference. Mm-hmm. They did talk about Royal Enfield's efforts in India to build up the casual riding community. Mm-hmm. Something that they feel, in North America at least, is a little bit more prevalent, which it is, because we don't ride out of necessity. It's more a leisure activity.
Well, we skipped this a little bit. Sorry if I've interrupted you there, but remember how I talked about the guy for immigration? Immigration, when he was talking about, I have a Himalayan, and he did specifically asked in the U.S., it's more of a hobby.
Yeah.
And that was clearly a distinguishing thing, is like they're riding to work.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the, I don't know, they never really talked about like what Motoverse, the intention is explicitly, but to me the intention is to make riding more of a social thing. Riding to go on an adventure rather than just to work. So they have a lot of effort put into because we participate in it, but into the more social aspects of it.
I think
so. They're trying to cultivate
definitely
the idea that you meet up and go riding.
You definitely see that from Royal Enfield. Sid Lal is the CEO of Royal Enfield, the mothership, and he was there, and he's a big personality. You know, it sucks because now all our people that are like this have bad connotations. But I'm thinking like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, but those are bad references these days. But he is like the face of this big company, and he gets out and yells, "Thanks everybody for coming, and here's the new product." He is that personality.
I don't want to I'll post this video later. I don't want to cut back to it in case it makes us lose the camera. But I have the video of him coming onto the stage, and everyone's just like,
they love
"Oh my God, I can't believe he's on the stage."
It was very fanboy like or whatever. But anyway, he clearly, in the way he's speaking, and he did on the new Himalayan, he did a tour solo right before this event and everything. So we
might be frozen again.
No, I think we're good. Maybe there.
Yeah. What do we do about that?
Try to refresh your things, and if anyone else is listening, let me know if anybody's out there, if anybody's listening, then let me know if we're frozen. But I can see myself moving, so I hope that's what's happening.
I'm sorry, I'm watching an ad.
Oh, just watch a couple ads. Okay, so that clearly is a thing that's happening, and I think they're sort of seeing that as a more outside of Indian culture.
Never mind, I'm just dumb.
I think
that's fine.
your thing just needed refreshed. No big deal. So that they're trying to do more adventure. See, the adventure riding thing, Europe, America, whatever, the West, is definitely a more of a Western thing, and they're trying to incorporate that into the Indian culture. Is get on your bike, and it makes sense if they're going to sell a more premium Himalayan or an adventure bike or these other bikes, even this cruiser like the Super Meteor, they need to get
our
people,
comment section's got jokes.
They need to get people to think about it more as a hobby or more of as this is a tool for adventure, because otherwise, why not just get a scooter, like for just commuting 5-10 miles to work in these slower roads? A scooter would be fine. So in order to really sell all these Himalayans and all the other things, it makes sense to try to do it.
I don't recall who Curly Wolf is, but they want to be
from Cincinnati, Kentucky,
cute, silly club boy as well.
Yeah, well, the world's your oyster. You could definitely do that. They definitely are that there. Yeah, and I think that's great. That would be way better in the U.S. if they weren't so threatening. I see on TikTok and Instagram, you see, oh, what happens if you try to ride your motorcycle next to a club and they'll like try to run you off the road and stuff. I don't know how typical that is, but that is like the impression and feeling in America, and that is not all what those guys were like. Okay, so back to Motoverse. There was just so much thought put into experiences. There's a thing happening over here where there are people presenting who are either influencers or they had done a movie, or Royal Enfield had racers
from Build
Royal
Train
Enfield
Race.
has in India, that's right, they build train race people, but in India they have a GT Cup. So they take GTs and they do like road racing. And so those guys were there. Remember when they did the Himalayas in like, where did they go? Antarctica? They went to the North Pole? What did they do? They did something
Alaska.
like that, and those guys were there because they made a video and then they sit and talk about it, and that was a very like intimate interview chat session that was like off to the side, and they have photo opportunities, which we won't bring it up, but you're leaning on the bike and stuff, and that was very cool to like set that up as a photo thing. All the custom
Mostly
stuff.
Because I don't want to bring that photo up because I look weird.
It's
dorky.
It was
if
very
you will.
hot. So their temperature. So there was a lot of custom bikes, of course, just a ton of custom stuff, and we put a bunch of them in our stories and stuff, and you can see that stuff. But they were so big, and they're very well done, very professionally like well done customs.
Some of them were like MK Designs,
creative, big names.
They had
big
different
names.
categories. They had like professional builders, and then they had garage builds.
Well, it all looked as high quality as you'll see, but of course,
I read
all
the signs.
All Royal Enfields. Then Royal Enfield kind of had their own booth that showed like the history of the Bullet and new bikes and some custom stuff that they had done. And they have just a cool thing where there's a Super Meteor and then a projection like TV screen behind it showing like the road flying. So you could take a cool photo and it looks like you're like flying down the road. That stuff was so well thought out. All these little interactive experiences that just, you never got bored. You kind of wander off and just discover some like cool new area. Helmet painting, tank painting. You had mentioned that earlier, but basically they have guys there that had blank tanks and they were the professional painter guys. And then you'd give it a shot and they're so bad. And it was a good way of showing like what a level of skill goes into it. Because it's like how we always joke that like they should have a regular guy in the Olympics. It was like that.
Yeah.
Where it was like it looks easy and you can't even make a line. And this guy's making these perfect lines and you can't even do like
you were off somewhere else, but I was watching this woman right next to like the main guy, and she was like finishing her line, and it was really good.
Yeah.
The table clapped.
They clapped?
They clapped.
Yeah.
Because they'd all been watching all these other people, struggle.
Well, she might have been one of the presenters.
No, she wasn't. She like the guy turned and said,
"Oh, she was
you looking for a
artist."
job?
Yeah. So then they would actually, we were like, how are they letting people paint? They had like 30 tanks and they would like rotate them out and then they'd wipe them down with like paint thinner and then reuse them. We had a video that just came out right next to that talking about the new Bullet. So one of the guys we went with is this guy Ron, who works for Royal Enfield North America. I can't remember his actual title, but he's like second in Royal Enfield North America. He clearly has some sway on what bikes we bring in or how many bikes of whatever we bring in. He assured us the Bullet was coming.
Okay, so because you're on that, there was a question that I want to address that somebody asked, will they continue to make the Signals 350?
I haven't heard any reason why they wouldn't. I guess the logic there is because it's too similar to the Bullet maybe or something, but I haven't heard any reason why they wouldn't do that. I don't know if you realize this, whoever's asking that question. Europe originally didn't get the Signals and now they have it. So I would say yes. I haven't heard
Bob Hasselbeck.
I haven't heard anything about not doing the Signals 350. We can order them now. Model years are kind of a weird thing. It's a very American idea, especially with the logistics and how long it takes to like get once something's made to actually get here. But we can still order classic 350s. Like they don't have them,
they don't
change.
Signals. They don't materially change a model every year.
Yeah, they're
like
identical to the original ones, even though they would be called like a 23 and the original is 22.
And a color may be 4 years running.
Yeah.
So the model year does not have much bearing on anything.
If you're thinking 2024, I'm pretty sure, I haven't heard any reason that they wouldn't, but I think they'll still do the Signals. The Bullets are going to, the Bullets exist in among the models that we could get. We're never going to, the Royal Enfield North America is never going to import a non-ABS model. And that's, if you've looked back at the different classics, there's one version of Classic we don't have. There's one version of the Hunters that we don't have. And it's because they don't have rear ABS. So that's off the table. Among the remaining Bullets, there are 3 types. There's a standard black, a standard, I think it's maroon. It's like a burgundy red. And then a all black, like stealth black. Or
I want to say
something.
stealth black,
Gold
but it is
black?
called something else.
It's like
Yeah.
gold black or something. Anyway, the one that we reviewed or did the first look on was that higher model, the gold black, I think it's called.
And it's gorgeous.
It is.
If you haven't looked at that, just so you know, we have 2 videos. This is segueing to hurry you up a little bit, but it's segueing into another question because it is 8:19. On our YouTube channel, there's a first look on both the Himalayan 450 and the Bullet 350.
Yeah, so check that one out. It's awesome looking. It's a very cool bike. In the US, I think we sort of just think of it as a different version of the Classic. Maybe that's where that question comes from or whatever. But
no, Bob has
was
a
earlier
Signals,
than this.
and he'd like to get another one for his wife because he loves it.
yeah, I don't see any reason why that would be difficult to do.
But the segue I'm bringing
Go
you
for it.
to
Go for it.
is the elephant in the room question. When do we get the 450? Piggybacking off of that, because you'll be able to answer both of them. Any idea if they're going to bring the newer black models of the INT 650 with tubeless tires?
Okay. I'm not in charge of this. Let's just start out with saying that. Dylan,
Let me start
Nobody
there.
asks me, and they should. But based on the way that the internet works nowadays is so fascinating and so weird, but you can find almost any version of any story. The right way to do it is sort of take in all the information and then use your critical thinking. So hard, I know, to come up with the correct answer. And so being dealers, seeing a little bit more behind the curtain, being in India, spending time with Ron, who's actually in charge of this decision, what I think is going to happen, Royal Enfield...
Things annoyingly make more sense.
Yeah. But Royal Enfield North America, because that whole model year thing and because of the regulations that I mentioned earlier about Euro 4, Euro 5, Euro 5 Plus... America obviously doesn't have that. We're not part of Euro. And so they basically want to... This is more speculation, so put across the bottom of the screen Dylan's opinion. They want to get rid of some of the current models that they have before they start bringing in new 650s. And there are more changes than it looks like on the surface. I have some photos of those when we were there in India. And if you've seen the Super Meteor, controls, handlebars, all that stuff, the grips, they are changed. So those bikes that we're talking about, the black models that Nicole and I had talked about last year, how crazy is that to think about, during our Quittin Time stuff when they first announced the black models. I don't know what they're really called, but Back in Black is what they first said when they were doing the marketing stuff. Those models aren't as small changes as they might originally have seemed.
We seem to have that issue with photographic representation in general.
They looked originally like they were just some color tanks and then blacked out pieces on the engine and blacked out exhaust and stuff like that. There are some more changes. And so I think that those will take a little bit longer because of that, because it's a little more complicated, because once you start bringing those in, they don't match the other bikes. The controls are different. The computers are different. The throttle body's different. Some of those different mechanical changes are going to need to either pass emissions, or basically they don't quite just slot right in to the current models. And I think they'll come in. The short answer version of this is sometime next year. So in the calendar year of 2024.
So this is one of those concepts that's one of the rare times that the model year is actually going to indicate a major change.
Yeah, but I think you're talking about the second half of 2024 when they start to bring those in, even though they're already currently in Europe and everything. And we saw them. They were normal bikes riding around and being on display and stuff like that. There's 4 bikes. There's 2 GTs and 2 Interceptors that have the different colors and the different handlebars and the different blacked out engines and stuff like that. They're very cool. They're awesome. We took a lot of photos of them and stuff like that. But I think it's going to be a while until we see them, because the complication that they represent to the existing bikes we have that I keep pointing to, but there's one behind me too, or one over here. But
yeah, they can't
they're
see
on the
outside the
showroom
frame.
floor, and if they brought those in like today, that's complicated. So the black versions, late. The Himalayan, I and this is Dylan's opinion again, flashing up on the screen, my bet is November, horrible time to introduce a motorcycle, of 2024. So I don't think we'll seriously talk about.
So effectively the riding season of 2025 for the Himalayan 450, and you could get some riding season for the new Interceptor.
If you look back at the models that they have introduced, it's bad. It's a bad idea. It's not how you introduce a model in North America, but Scram came out in November-ish, or mostly like late October. Super Meteor this year came out in November. The Super Meteor was announced at Motoverse last year. So that's exactly how long it took to come out here, is almost a year, 9 months, 11 months, depending on how you think about like when they were actually in the showroom. So I'm thinking November next year for the Himalayan. It has to go through our version of homologation. It has to be pass emissions. It has to pass California, which is the big pain in the butt. And it's a new model. So
if you're watching from California, I didn't mean it. Everything
is so much harder there as far as new vehicles. So that's going to happen. There's also Meteor. So there's Bullet. There's Meteor has two or three different colors called Aurora. They have spoke wheels. They have vintage color looks. Very cool. We saw those in person. The best way of talking about all of these, if you're dead set on any of these new models, I don't know how other dealers are doing it, but the way that we're handling it is pre-ordering. So we do $500 deposits that's completely refundable. But basically, if you're like, I have to have a Himalayan, if you give me $500, which of course is fully refundable if it's taking too long, or you get another bike, or I don't know, you lose your job between now and then or something, we would refund it. But basically from that point on, I'll fight with our guys to make sure you get the first Himalayan or first
So essentially
round of
what we
orders.
did for the Super Meteors is how I think that we will be doing this going forward. And it worked out this way. And I think that Royal Enfield will continue with this. But if we have proven deposits on bikes, we get those in addition to our flooring stock. And so you are more guaranteed a bike rather than waiting until we get stock and have to fight with the 7 other people who want that same bike.
Inside baseball, the way that things have been going lately is, for example, the Super Meteors, we were allowed to order one of every color. So say 2 people want green. If you hadn't have put your name in, your money in ahead of time, you're just out of luck if one person got here that day and saw it on social media and got here and wanted the green one. So the way to avoid it is to put the money in, like I said, completely refundable. I would hate the idea of being like, you're stuck and you just have your money and we don't know when this bike's ever going to come.
We just essentially, with dollars on a pre-order with a sales,
we just need someone to be more serious.
We have the ability to tell them, we already have someone waiting for this and we want our stock ones.
And the line for this is officially announced models. So we're doing this for anything Moto Guzzi as well, but Royal Enfield's that, like, it exists. Shotgun. We skipped ahead of this, but
that's a good segue into the next question.
So any of those things. Go ahead with the question.
Okay, so I love this question.
Oh, yeah.
Is the Shotgun actually a new bike, or is it sort of just a modified Super Meteor?
I don't know.
That's a semantic question.
Yes is the answer to both.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about it, if you really get into the nerdery of Royal Enfield, they're mostly doing engine families. So
I would say engine and frame.
Yeah, maybe. But there's a 650, and then there's 3 different types of 650. There's cruiser, there's standard, and there's sporty. There's a 350, and there's 3 different types of 350. There's a cruiser, Meteor, standard, classic, sporty, hunter. That's how they're thinking about most things. That's how they're covering kind of the broad spectrum. And so within those, they're not locked into 3 different versions of each. Obviously, the 450 or the 411 currently doesn't really have 3 versions of each. There is talk about a Hunter 450, which, like I said, that would be the line. I wouldn't take money on a Hunter 450 because it's not officially announced.
I think a good example of that, specifically when it comes to what we would take deposits on, is when people were absolutely insisting that there would be a Himalayan 650.
Yeah, if it's not officially announced by Royal
It was not
Enfield,
announced, and
then
it will never be.
Well, I don't know about that.
It will never be.
But there will be like a Scrambler 650 that eventually. That's not official, but that's a rumor thing. There's all those kinds of things. So where the shotgun fits in is a little awkward. But basically, we have the engine from the 650. We have the frame from the Super Meteor. We have the concept. The shotgun was a concept a while back, so maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, at one of the events, maybe EICMA or something, a motorcycle event, and it has the tire sizes that original concept had. So this is a little odd, but the Super Meteor, which I believe is a brilliant motorcycle, and I put a ton of miles on ours before it got too cold to really do it, even though I rode it yesterday.
It's quite lovely.
19-inch front wheel. If you don't really get into the nerdy stuff about motorcycles, wheel sizes maybe seem arbitrary, but the wheel has a lot to do with the characteristics. Obviously, the engine has a lot to do with the characteristics of the bike, but the wheel size actually has a lot to do with it. And 19 front, 16 rear. So big, fat sidewall tire, small wheel comparatively, and in the front, a bigger wheel. And that gives it the cruiser stance that is the size, for the most part, of like a Sportster and a lot of the Harleys. So it is that like quintessential cruiser. The shotgun, in more of the custom theme or the custom style, 18-inch front, 17-inch rear. If you look at it, you can see that. The rear looks like a bigger wheel. The front has a little bit more of a leveled out stance rather than more of a kind of choppery. I don't know if any of this hands motions help, but these are obviously subtle changes. We're talking about an inch in tire size. It's really not huge. The mid controls, bar in mirrors, solo seat, convertible seat, which we haven't really actually seen work, but you've sort of seen photos of one and on and one.
I saw at the dealer conference a simulation animation.
But apparently that pillion seat comes on and off easily. Maybe it even like stows in there somehow or whatever on the fly. But there is sort of this like solo pillion conversion thing. But basically it's a bobber. It's how you would think about like the Triumph bobber as opposed to the Speedmaster. Speedmaster is like the Super Meteor. The bobber is like the shotgun. And I don't know what that would be like sort of in the world of really anything else. The Indian, there's a Scout and a Scout bobber. It's kind of like that. So in that sense, it is a version of the Super Meteor with sort of slightly different ergonomics. The feet controls are different. The handlebars are slightly different. The seat's different. The wheels, but the tank is really similar. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but it looks the same to me. The styling is very similar. It's about the same category. I know there are a lot of people that feel, I'm obviously not one of those people, but they feel really strongly about not having their feet forward, and it's more mid controls. So if some people, that was your deal breaker on the Super Meteor, then you're lucky day for you. The shotgun's an odd one because we've heard rumors about this for a long time. It seems like a very American thing. The first one that they've announced was a Motoverse specific 25 units. So you had to be at Motoverse and you had to be there and put your name in, and then had like a lottery system, and then you were able to buy one of these first ones with this very same paint scheme. It's like a kind of 80s, 90s neon yellow and blue. Very cool paint scheme, but like they're all the same. You don't get any choice. You're buying that bike that you saw up on stage. Later on, and if you saw just after this, the week following, they sent one to Roland Sands. They sent one to different, basically, they sent body style.
They said at the dealer conference that they aren't sure exactly how this process is going to work, but essentially they're still trying to decide between regular rollouts of updated colors to the general public, but in addition to or in place of that would be every 6 months to a year collaboration editions.
Yeah, so I feel like that's probably what's going to happen is there'll be sort of a base model and then regular limited edition models with these like famous builders, creators. Roland Sands is our American version of that, but there was some, maybe Back was on that list, BAAK, or some people call it Bach, but custom, big house, custom houses that do this kind of stuff, and they'll have their own limited editions and stuff like that. So that's probably what's going to happen, but it represents an odd problem if you're sort of like, oh, I have to have a shotgun. I have no idea what the consistent availability of that will be. I don't know if it'll be like the 120th anniversary ones where they had like a lottery system every time. We don't know.
They said that was still all completely in the development stage in terms of that.
So but it's kind of like they put the cart before the horse and announced it, but they aren't sure about when they'll be available. Because
in that same vein, thinking about the idea of should you put money on a motorcycle.
Can I go back real quick and talk about, speaking of cart before the horse, they announced the 450 at the end of day one during the music concert stuff that we were at night. This is like 9 o'clock at night or something, 8 o'clock at night. And then they announced a secret surprise shotgun 650. We actually had to go get back on the bus, but they had announced it there on the stage. There's tons of people in the audience. There's rock concerts going on, and then they made that announcement. So that's where we're talking about shotgun, if you haven't paid attention. That's how it fits in the whole Motoverse thing. It was a surprise announcement that first day.
Yes, you think you're getting the surprise with the 450 announcement. Which
was a lame surprise, because like I said, there was 100 there. Everyone already knew about the 450. We'd already sat on at that point. So, announcing the 450, how lame. And then they gave you the uppercut.
If my local... Okay, so bringing this back to our system for putting money on a bike that isn't here yet. And we're not exactly sure when it will be here yet. But somebody was saying that if my local dealer won't do that for here, which I'm not sure where Average Joe Rides is from. Oh, wait, Illinois. Okay, I will happily fly my butt out to Ohio and ride it home to Northern Illinois.
What is he talking about, a specific bike? Or?
He is the one who actually asked about the Interceptor models.
Oh, yeah.
The newer Interceptor models.
Well, here's the thing, is we're nerds. We pay attention. We're trying to order as many of the new things. We always love the new things. We love Royal Enfield as much as anybody. And so we're always like first in line. But by the time that stuff really gets out there, unless you have a really extra small dealer or they're going through some weird phase in their business and they're trying not to invest in bikes, I don't see why they wouldn't have that bike. But if you need someone to be that advocate who you trust, that says like, I know these guys are going to put me first in line, we would be happy to do that. We have done that with plenty of people who don't live here, who aren't that local to us. I will go to our regional manager. I will put your name on the list first. I will hound our guys to make sure that bike is here as soon as possible. So if you're a local dealer, if you don't trust them to do that, there's no real theoretical reason why you couldn't do that, but I get it. Why you think those guys don't care enough to make sure I get that bike first. Did you have another question?
I do not.
Okay. So Motoverse, it was amazing. It was a 3-day event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They did just an amazing job with the music and the custom stuff and all that stuff. I feel like we should probably wrap this thing up. If you have more questions, get them in now. We'll do our Midwestern goodbye and slap our legs and stuff.
Well,
but
we're getting a checkered flag from Rayburn.
Is that like the hook we're trying to get off stage?
I don't know.
So I mean, I do agree. Nicole and I knew this was going to be a long one because you just have so much to say. And
we didn't tell you half. We didn't tell you half of the things.
I cut out going to temples. We went to some ancient temples. There was an international dealer meeting. There was just so much to see. I was trying to keep this train on the tracks the whole time. There's a lot, especially.
I'm just pulling up the caboose, just get out of my way.
Especially Motoverse of what happened. So, did you feel like you had any more Indian culture, any more Motoverse, any more things that we missed that you wanted to definitely?
I feel like if we get to go again, or if we choose to go again, I would like to go earlier.
This was all like 6 days. Yeah. It was a real like whirlwind. I mean, the amount of planes, we were on like 30 hours worth of flights in 7 days. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah. But I do feel like once we got to Goa, I felt like I probably could have ridden a motorcycle there.
Yeah, but yes, you're right.
And so next time, if I have the opportunity to go to Motoverse, that I maybe don't need to go to Chennai this time.
Yeah.
Even though the factory tour was my favorite thing.
The factory was definitely worth seeing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know what I would really like to do? I would love to go to India again. I mean, we had a great time, and the food and the people and everything was just so cool, and the culture and just the subtle differences. But everyone was like, it definitely felt safe, and and everyone felt friendly, and there was literally one person that didn't speak English the entire time. As far as I know, that everyone we talked
that we
to.
interacted with.
So as far as us dumb Americans who don't know how to talk any other languages, other than Spanish, which wasn't very helpful.
No.
And
interestingly enough, was not helpful.
And we could tell when the Latin American guys were saying nasty things about us, but but that was it. And then but for the most part, I'm like, I was amazing. I would love to go somewhere sort of in the north. You always see, speaking of itchy boots, there's this like Ladakh area, which is like north where the Himalayan mountains start.
That's what I was saying, is I would like to go with the being prepared to ride from one place to go up.
I mean, like, if we had to design it or whatever, I'd love to get in those wide open spaces parts where you're not so concerned. It's more of an adventure because of the road and stuff. You're not concerned about getting hit by a bus or a cow or whatever.
So in our conclusion, I want to read just the thanks. Great update. Thank you so much. That was super cool. Thanks for sharing. Awesome content. Thank you for everything and answering questions.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Nobody does this like you.
Oh.
Please put together some videos in a video.
We have that. We have GoPro that we took. Nicole did a lot of, as we call it, sidey, uppy, downy, and sidey,
yes,
sidey
side
video.
to side and uppy, downy.
So, widescreen style. And we've got a lot of that we're going to try to compile in there. If you're interested in the 450, I had the 450 out there. It's actually our fastest growing video. It has 20,000 views in like a week.
So like go see it and see what all the hullabubb is about.
But a lot of people saw that. It was a crazy opportunity. What is fascinating about this is Nicole and I have this attitude. We feel, hopefully that kind of thing comes across, but we feel like we've been given this opportunity. We won this trip. We went to India. We wanted to share. That's part of what we're doing right now, but we wanted to share our experience. So we took so much photos and videos and did our like first look stuff on the Himalayan and the Bullet, and we're trying to share what this was like, because before I went, I would watch the Motoverse live streams and the things, and I didn't understand the scale and stuff like that. So I'm trying to I found it fascinating. You had a great time. We had a great time. And I'd love to just give you an idea of what that was like, because it was awesome.
Well, next time we go, we'll be going with Jason to Goa, and his cousin and her husband will give us a tour.
Very cool.
She doesn't know she's been volunteered, but I'm gonna screenshot this and
Goa was
send it
interesting. We saw a Chicago pizza place. Like there was definitely a Western influence. Some of the places were like the Fisherman's Bar or whatever. Like they had definitely had more of like white people vacation area, if that makes any sense, where it was more of a, like, Chennai was not a tourist place as much as Goa had people traveling to it. Yeah. Because you didn't like my white people tourist vacation area. I do think, do you have any more observations or things to talk about there?
No, I just know that you're not done seeing content from the trip, because we have so much video.
Sort of a vlog style. We filmed some stuff that was like, we're in the airport waiting on the airplane. We're heading to Germany. Now we're in Germany, that kind of thing. So we're going to do hopefully a wrap up. There might be some
that might make
narration.
More sense to the chronological order of this live stream.
We've been all over the place, but yeah, hopefully people asked all their questions that they had. I mean, obviously it's literally true here, but we could talk for hours about all the things.
Yes, we're clearly Midwestern goodbying right now, because we have been goodbying for 12 minutes.
That's called... No, is that true? 12 minutes? That's the live stream. Do you have to pee or something? Is that why you're calling that? Is that true?
I had a Coke.
Oh, no. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. I know something like this is an odd format where you might just check in and it's live stream, and hopefully you feel like you can engage with us and ask questions. But I know it's not the kind of format for everyone to talk for 2 hours or 2.5 hours or whatever it's been.
And he's not kidding. I feel like we have a full 2 more hours to talk usually, and we have to specifically cut it off.
So there will be another Quittin Time in the future. That's probably there's a lot of new
there's a
models.
lot going on between now and the end of the year, and then
there's
between
a lot
now and Meekum.
Yeah, there's a lot of new models. There's Meekum coming up. It's funny because you think of winter is getting calming down or getting quiet or whatever, but I feel like there's a lot of like things that happen because of that, and then it winds up being that we're busy the whole time, and next thing you know it's spring. So there's a lot going on, and stay tuned because we'll definitely do more Quittin Times. And I hope people, I mean, we're not saying any secrets or anything that we're not supposed to say, but hopefully people understand that we will be honest with you, and I'll try to give you the most information or the best guess at the information. And I know a lot of people are very hesitant to do that. So that's our personality. That's the kind of dealers that we are, where we're just nerds.
I think that's what someone was saying, that
stuff.
Nobody does this like you. Like I get that it sounds a little bit of a self pat yourself on the back thing, but we do what we want.
that is the benefit of not having a boss. Yeah.
The fact that we want to do this type of thing. I was telling someone the other day.
To be honest, no one from Royal Enfield or whoever's going to get us in trouble is going to take the time to watch a 2-hour thing. So we're safe.
It's like when you have those videos and it's like, all right, ladies, let me show you the skincare. And it's like, it's all the guys gone. Now it's time to talk about the real thing.
Yeah.
But that we have been, I hate the word blessed.
#blessed.
We have had the opportunities to engage more with other dealers more and more, literally in the last couple of months. And it's become obvious that our passion lies elsewhere at times. And so I appreciate that people appreciate things like this that we do.
Yeah.
That we want to.
Oh, so when you said we do what we want, we do what we want to see. We would love something like this.
Not even just that, but like we make it a priority to do things like events and
so speaking of, you have a toy drive Saturday.
Yes. Oh, that was the other point of Quittin Time, is to give you information of what's coming up.
This is for like the two people that stuck around during this Midwestern goodbye. You have a ride morning Saturday.
The 17 people.
2 days from now.
So on Saturday, December 9th at 9 a.m., we're meeting at the Target on Olentangy River Road to ride to the CAS campus, which is just up the road on Olentangy River Road. But we meet at Target at 9 a.m., kickstands up at 10 a.m. So in that hour between, you go into Target or Marshall's or whatever the stores are there that you want to pick, and you can buy a toy, or you can bring a toy, whichever one. The weather's actually supposed to be really nice.
60 is the high. Obviously, it won't be that at like 9 or 10 a.m.
No, but it also isn't going to rain until later in the afternoon, like 6 o'clock.
It's definitely an opportunity to ride, whether or not it's specifically warm enough.
It's the best weather I could pick for December 9th in Ohio.
It's crazy.
So then we will ride from the donation location back to Throttle for hot chocolate. So it's just, and if you need to drive, we had a couple people ask if they can cage it. I don't care.
And if you were like extremely generous and buying a bunch of stuff,
then you have a car to put it all in. Yeah, it's totally fine. Most people at the donation site will be in cars, so it's not like you're going to stick out.
That's right. It's not a motorcycle only donation thing. And then the other one is movie night.
That is December 15th.
So that's next Friday?
Yeah.
Saturday? Friday? Is it Friday?
Yes. So they alternate between Friday and Saturday.
We're doing off season. One of our events is movie night. We've already done.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's a Saturday.
Okay, Saturday. We've already done 2. Yep.
October and November.
Ghost Rider and Akira. And we're watching another movie this time. Show up. It's very casual. It's hangout. We put a projector up. We make popcorn, bring snacks, that kind of thing. It's gone great so far. I'm really surprised by the attendance. It's great.
I am not surprised by the attendance.
I mean, pleasantly surprised. Like, it's a lot of people show up to this, and I'm just like, we're just watching a movie in the shop. We push the bikes out of the way, and anyway, I don't know. I'm just humbled by it. Is basically my way of saying it. We have a series that you're working on. Gosh, there's a lot of housekeeping at the end here. A series that you're working on, which is noobs stuff. So you're talking about...
It's becoming a motorcycle rider. I've learned that people were a little bit miffed by the noobs.
Oh, becoming a motorcycle rider. So basically transitioning from not motorcycle rider to motorcycle rider. And it'll be things like how to take the class, then how to buy a bike. I know you're doing a whole series. So basically,
Yeah. So right now it's a 3-part series, January, February, March. And then we're going to transition into things like things a beginner rider needs to know, like basic, very, very basic motorcycle maintenance, how to join the motorcycle community, how to maintain your bike on the road or on a trip, or how often do you have to check your tire pressure, things like that, that I already foresee that I'm going to get tons of what oil do I put in my bike comments.
That's fine.
But
that is a kind of question we would talk about.
I just mean the people who will go in and try to be.
But this is the safe space for that kind of thing.
Yes.
We're going to have people show up. We're talking about two different things. So your series, and then I wanted to do a series, which was, or not a series, a single thing, which is the basics of motorcycle maintenance, how to check your tire pressure. What are the things you want to check? Chain, whether you have a shaft drive or whatever, those kind of things, checking your fluids, brakes, things like that are just like newer riders, or maybe you just have been riding for a while and you kind of, I'm the other kind of person that just puts the gas in and then turns the key and goes. That's totally fine. Because I just feel
like our newbie ride this past year was very successful.
Yeah, and we're if that's not obvious, we're big on this kind of thing. Royal Enfield especially, we talked about them a lot. They're a very approachable brand. We have a lot of newer riders. I want to create this safe space where it's like when Wikipedia first came out, that was my thing about it. Is like, oh, it's great because I don't have to feel dumb for asking this question. I can just look it up and be like, okay, now I know. It's that kind of thing. There isn't really a lot of good information. You ask something on Facebook, people will jump on you and make fun of you, or like she said about the oil, that's a classic one. I will be patient and spend time and happy to be talking about which oil you should be putting in your motorcycle, and I'll be happy to get rid of some of that mystery.
And in a what I feel like might be the question, the 3-part ride series, Becoming a Rider series, is going to be co-ed. So if you are questioning that because I'm running it, it's not it is co-hosted by the Litas, but it is not a Litas only event. So it is co-ed. It
is honestly, we talk about a lot, and we've talked about it before, and I'm going to wrap up, I promise. It honestly is a big thing to become a motorcycle rider. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're trying to help shepherd you along.
Particularly if you don't have
to go from zero if you don't know people.
With no people.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what I have been. And if you are in this live chat, or you've seen the group on Facebook or the event page on Facebook, if you can share it to anyone you've ever even remotely thought might be interested, because I feel like what we have learned is that most people, there's 2 different kinds. There's people who met someone and then got into it, or someone who's been riding since they were a kid. There isn't really a singular silo person in a vacuum who decides I'm going to get into this all that much.
You have to be kind of exceptionally outgoing, and if you're not like that and you need a little bit more of a guide, we're happy to do it. So that's the thing, it is weird. There aren't a lot of other things where you like need a license. You know what I mean? You already have a car license, but like that's just a rite of passage everybody kind of goes through together. But to get a motorcycle license, it is a bit more mysterious, and it is a bit more of a undertaking. And then buying a bike, gosh, is that intimidating? I totally get it. So, and there's just so many options and so much information out there and so many opinions. So we're happy to help shepherd you through there. I'm happy to wrap it up as well. Did you have something specific?
No, that's wrapping up.
Okay.
You should follow
Thank you so much for watching. Sorry I interrupted. I was saying thank you.
Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which all sounds very salesy, except for the fact that I hear all the time, I didn't know you were doing a thing. Well, that's where you find out that we're doing a thing. So if you are wanting to know when our next Quittin Time is going to be, check our Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and that's where you'll find out where that is.
All right, time to hit the old dusty trail.
Okay, bye.
Well,
that's me getting home.
We're Midwestern. All right.